All right, here we go. Drive time, Thursday afternoon, 16 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. Breaking news, it's hot outside. Breaking news, it's sunny outside. Breaking news, it is going to be hot and sunny all weekend long because it is July and we live in the desert. Hello, how are you? Happy Thursday. It is about 16 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Appreciate you making the show a part of your day. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That is my name. Porter Larson is out today, so our guy James Peterson along for the ride producing. A lot to do on the show. As I continue to say, the summer of soccer rolls along and didn't go well for RSL last night. They got smoked. They got smoked pretty good. LAFC handled them. 3-1 was your final score. So the World Cup now behind us. The second half of the season for MLS now ahead of us. A couple more road matches before we see RSL back here in our market Saturday against Portland at 8:30 Mountain Time, taking on the Portland Timbers, who have been in pretty good form as of late. So RSL, we'll see if they can get back on the winning side of things coming up on Saturday after a rough one last night. The world of pro basketball continues to wait on the decision of LeBron James. The Miami Heat tweeted out, they actually posted a YouTube link to a press conference introducing LeBron James coming up in a couple of days. And the prediction markets took notice. Now Miami is the favorite to land LeBron. Put him next to Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo. See what they can do in the Eastern Conference. Most of the pundits out there do believe that LeBron's going to end up out east after 8 years with the LA Lakers. The Utah Jazz appear to be set as far as what we're going to see this year. Now, that could change. They do have 15 players under contract, so it looks like the roster is set. Again, the over-unders continue to believe the Jazz are not going to take much of a jump up this year. I think we are certainly expecting them to take a jump up, but 34.5 wins is where DraftKings has the over-under for Jazz wins this year. And we'll see if they can make some noise and maybe get into the play-in, or if things go right, maybe they actually make the playoffs. As announced yesterday, Eric Weddle announced as the honoree for the Utah Football Ring of Honor coming up at Rice-Eccles Stadium for the Arkansas game. Training camp opens for the Utes coming up in just a matter of days. And we are just over 40 days away from kickoff for Utah football and Big 12 football. This week, most of the attention has been on the SEC Media Days down in Tampa rolling along. And the conversation seems to be surrounded, once again, continuously on the future of the sport. Lane Kiffin addressed the media earlier today. Whenever Lane speaks, people like to pay attention. Actually expressed some regret, which somebody for a personality type like that is rather rare. Comes across as a rather narcissistic dude. But Lane Kiffin addressing the media today. So we'll get into some college football storylines. Training camps in the NFL continue to roll along with the rookies. The vets are going to report here coming up in just a little bit. So we'll get to some pro football storylines in addition to everything else that's going on this busy Thursday show. Our first guest will be Brian Dunseth. I just came over to the studio after recording tonight's episode of Talkin' Real with Dunny, who's back in our market. After 7 weeks covering the World Cup, traveling to a bunch of different places. He was in Mexico for some games, Philadelphia for some games. And Dunny was on the call last night with Max Bredas for Apple Television for the LAFC match against RSL. So we'll bring in Dunny today to talk a little World Cup, talk a little soccer, see how his experience was. Smitty, Richard Smith, live in studio. Where does he think LeBron James should land? What does he make of what we perceive to be the final roster for the Utah Jazz? And we'll talk some NBA basketball with Smitty for an hour today on the program on a Thursday. My friend Jenna Fink from KUTV will join us. Jenna is a new anchor in town. Dallas native originally, I believe, comes to us from Arizona. And she's done a great job for our friends at KUTV. So we'll get to know Jenna a little bit on the program. And with camp right around the corner, we figured we'd bring in Stevenson Sylvester on the program. Always fun to catch up with Sly. He was down at Big 12 Media Days with us in Frisco, so appreciate his time. Brian Dunseth, Richard Smith, Jenna Fink, Stevenson Sylvester, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, hello, how are you? Happy Thursday. And filling in for Porter Larson is James Peterson, program director here at the station and typically the producer of the Sean O'Connell Show. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, good. It's doing a little double duty today, which I don't mind. Porter's done that for me a couple times earlier this year, so I kind kind of owe you, man. I mean, I definitely will sit in for you during the drive today. Excited to be here.
Well, we appreciate you pulling double duty. We'll hear from James intermittently throughout the program today. Our first guest to talk a little RSL, a little soccer, will be Brian Dunseth. But before Dunny stops by, courtesy of our good friends at Game Day Men's Health, it is time now for your opening tip. Now, Game Day Men's Health, you guys have probably heard me talking about them for about 6 or 7 months now. And here's the deal. Okay, so if you're streaming us online at work, thank you for doing that. Pull up your preferred internet browser, type in GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Or if you're driving around town, wait until you're at a stoplight or maybe getting some gas. GameDayMen'sHealth.com on your phone or on your computer. And then schedule your free consultation. Let's just get that done right out of the gates today because it is free. It costs you nothing. It takes maybe 20 to 30 minutes out of your day, and it has the potential of changing your life. I was actually out at Game Day Men's Health today out in Bountiful because I go in every few months to check my levels, okay? So the free consultation is about a 20 to 30-minute sit-down where they're going to draw a little bit of blood. Then they're going to sit with you, and they're going to go over your levels, and they're going to tell you where you're doing really well, and they're going to tell you where they can maybe help you if there are some areas where you might be a little low, and that happens to all of us, certainly as we age. But here's the most exciting part of this deal, and I appreciate them doing this for my listeners because sometimes we'll get a client's like, hey, we're going to give you 5% off. I'm like, no one's going to call you then. They're giving you 50% off your entire membership if you tell them you heard me talking about it on the radio show. So if you need to lose weight, if you're trying to get back in shape, or if you're trying to get in better shape as it is pool season, they can help you do that in a very expedited way, as opposed to just trying to do it the way you did when you were in your 20s, because I can tell you that doesn't work. Coming up next month, I will have been working with them for 3 years, and it took me about 2 to 3 months to get back in shape. And the best part is I've been able to maintain it 3 years later. GameDayMen'sHealth.com is where you go. Schedule the free consultation. Let's get you back in shape and help you lose some weight with our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. All right, we were discussing this during Crosstalk with Sean. Kyle Whittingham was notorious for being, he didn't like information to be released from the football building. And when information was released from the football building, Kyle Whittingham, it's very well known, that he would have, how shall I say, a gentle, stern talking to his staff and folks that he wanted to know, like, look, we're doing a thing here. Let's make sure that the information stays where it needs to stay. Now, that's not a realistic ask in the modern day, certainly with social media and the ability that players and anyone on staff has, quite frankly, to take to their platform. And even if it's innocently, even if it's a little bit of an innocuous piece of information is disseminated now in a way that it just makes it really hard to maintain messaging in your building. Some organizations are better at it than others. The Jazz are notoriously a private organization dating all the way back to the 80s. I mean, that's not a new thing. Frank Layden was more willing, I would say, to sit down with media, and once upon a time, beat writers actually flew on the team plane. It is a different day and age. There's a great video of Frank sitting down with, I think it was KSL, and going over his draft board with them. He sat down and they televised the process of Frank saying, okay, this is who we like at 1. This is who we like at 2. He did the entire thing. But messaging now is a lot more protected, and I understand why. Sometimes I think it's a little bit silly and comes across as a little bit just unnecessarily cloaked, right? Even though, as I always like to say, what I try to do with this job as somebody who's worked for teams and now somebody who's in media, I try to bring both sides to it. And as somebody who's worked for a team for a number of years, I can tell you one of the goals is to propagate the message you want the fans to believe. Propagate the message you want the community to buy into. It's very rarely about transparency and it's a tricky dance because it's not necessarily lying per se, but it's sharing the half-truths you want people to know and then kind of wrapping it up in a nice little package that makes it presentable to the media, to the fans, to the market. Okay, I get the job. I understand what they're trying to do. And the question for me in the modern day comes down to, what do fans actually want? What do you, as the sports-consuming public, actually want? Do you want to know the truth about how the sausage is made? Do you want to know the truth about all the relationships and all the layers that are complex and complicated? And obviously, what we went through in December of last year with Morgan and Witt was a really interesting dynamic. Our friends at Utah did a really good piece after Big 12 Media Days discussing the decision-making process of Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin and Wayshawn Parker and Lance Holtzclaw and John O'Hall and others who had opportunities to go play elsewhere after Witt decided that he was going to leave and take the Michigan job, and what it was like for them to come to the decision and the conclusion that they wanted to play for Morgan and they wanted to stay in Salt Lake. But you guys remember that time. We were all trying to get information, and it was just a really weird deal as far as how it all went down. The public records request, FOIA grandma request that was fulfilled by Utah revealed the email interaction between Mark Harlan and Kyle's agent and how that all went down. And Mark was good enough to come in his studio and for about 30 minutes answered every question. Well, answered the majority of the questions I asked him, right? About that entire thing and how hard it was for him and how complex it was to try to balance these things out. And look, this is a hyper-competitive space, and I hate the term alpha male. Part of me doesn't even think it's a real thing. Part of me believes it's been co-opted by people that want to use it to describe certain things. But for lack of a better phrase, whether it's college or pro, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, hockey, or soccer, the people running the organization, sometimes the people that own the organization, and the people that are in coaching, in addition to the players, you are surrounded by very complex, at times, complicated, competitive alpha males. And in that dynamic, it's just inevitable that you're going to run into roadblocks with each other. And honestly, this is a sports concept that I actually think is applicable to real life. There's nothing wrong with conflict. Conflict actually can lead to resolution as long as you're willing to communicate and talk about it. Now, if you're going to be passive aggressive and communicate via text messaging, and you're not willing to actually make a phone call or go into somebody's office, there's going to be lost in translation moments that are never fully ironed out with closure or what you need because you're not willing to actually act like an adult and talk about it. And there was some of that seeped into that entire dynamic last December. I bring this all up because, again, part of this is out of necessity in order to protect messaging, in order to protect game plans, in order to protect injuries, which Witt was notorious for being, in my opinion, a little bit over the top about. Witt took all media access away from watching practices, and Morgan's going to do the same thing. Now, do I think Morgan will be a little bit more relaxed here or there? Yeah, probably. I'd referenced this earlier. Ari Temkin from Big 12 Radio was asked this week which coach at Big 12 Media Days was the biggest breath of fresh air, and he said, by far, Morgan Scalley, because it's finally fun to talk to a Utah football coach. Took a couple of shots at Kyle because Kyle was great to me. I have no complaints about the way Kyle treated me or handled this show. He was willing to come on. He wouldn't come on as long as Morgan. And when he was on the show, it was a little bit more of a tight 10, right? And then when 10 minutes was up, we get the text, okay, Kyle's done. Morgan will sit down with you for 20 to 30 minutes. He'll tell you stories. He'll sing at times if you ask him to. They're just different personalities. But in this dynamic, it appears they're going to be more or less the same. And I'm not media guy complaining because, like I said, I get it from the team side. I do wonder what you guys want because I always try to keep that in mind when it comes to the show. Make sure the listeners are getting what they want and what they're looking for. How much of it is the truth? How much of it is the team line? How much of it is the propaganda that you just want to believe in because you love your team? And I don't really know the answer to that because it does seem in the modern day, most fans are more willing to kind of just drink the Kool-Aid because it makes them feel better about the team they cheer for as opposed to wanting to know exactly what was going on. Now, we have analytics. We have the ability to see and hear exactly what you guys listen to the most. And it was pretty clear most everybody around here was hoping and wanting and waiting to learn the truth about exactly what went down when Witt decided to leave and they gave the job to Morgan. But the announcement today I found pretty interesting that a lot of people assume that Morgan would allow a little bit more access. It doesn't feel like that's going to be the case, at least right out of the gates. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Coming up on the other side, we're going to switch gears. Brian Dunseth, who has been covering the World Cup and calling games for about 7 weeks, is now back in town. We recorded episode 20 of Talkin' Real, which will come your way tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. Earlier today, he was on the call last night with Max Bredas for Apple Television as LAFC handled RSL pretty easily. Dunny's going to be our first guest. Coming up next on ESPN 700. The summer of soccer does continue. For those of you that were captivated by the World Cup, which is now behind us, There's an MLS team close to where you live. For us, that's Real Salt Lake. They played last night. It didn't go well. But our next guest will hopefully ease some concerns, and it's great to have him back on the ground after 7 weeks covering and calling World Cup games. Brian Dunseth on a Thursday. What's up, man? How are you?
Long time no see, my man.
Yeah, literally like 30 minutes ago, we finished our Talkin' Real show, which will come your way tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. But look, I don't want to speak for you, so I'm going to let you speak for yourself, hence why I'm asking questions, then you will talk. That's the way interviews work. But I would imagine this last 7 weeks, is it too far to call it maybe a dream come true? What was it like to cover and call World Cup games?
I mean, individually, personally, yeah, man. Listen, I never had the opportunity to play for a World Cup. I came up short. I was close in '98. Maybe if a different manager was in charge, maybe if Clive Charles instead of Bruce Arena at the time, and it would have gone in a different direction, maybe that would have been an opportunity. But I mean, from a second life within the game to have this chance, I go back to 2018 where I was pretty close with Fox, and then things kind of turned sideways. And then to have this opportunity with the world feed and, be getting messages from all over, whether it was like South Africa or Australia or England, Morocco, Netherlands, people were texting me on vacation in Scotland and Ireland and listening to the games and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal experience. And it was something that you and I had talked about kind of privately building into it. Being based in Monterrey, Mexico, in arguably the most beautiful stadium setting in all of the World Cup matches, and to see it from kind of a Mexican perspective and watching, there's so many different, from Sweden fans to Tunisian fans to Japanese fans to Korea Republic fans to the Dutch fans to South African fans to the Moroccan fans. Seeing that experience firsthand down there was nothing short of phenomenal. And then heading into Philly for the July 4th game for France and Paraguay, where it felt like the sun was directly on top of you, and it was like 107 degrees at kickoff. All of those moments were something that I never got to do as a player, and I didn't think I'd get to do as a broadcaster. But yeah, I definitely took those moments where I just kind of stopped for a second and just took it all in and realized how incredibly lucky and fortunate I am.
It really is such a cool tournament. I mean, it's so fun. And I always forget because it's once every 4 years and then it leaves and you forget about it. And then,
Yeah.
come like winter, you're like, oh, wait, it's a World Cup cycle and you're following the national team. And look, I don't know how much of it was because it was played here domestically with these three countries. I don't know how much of it felt just because it was so close. Maybe there was the excitement of our national team. But for me, this was the coolest World Cup cycle I've ever consumed, Dunny. And I like, honestly, by far.
Yeah, I mean, I've told you the story a few times, like going back to being a 16-year-old in Southern California and not having enough money to be able to find tickets, much less purchase tickets down at the Rose Bowl. I was interning at the LA Convention Center just to try to be around the game because at the time they were doing these World Cup conventions. And then, parking my truck, the brown trout on top of, the Pasadena before walking down into the bowl where the Rose Bowl is and just being around that atmosphere, it was incredible. And growing up and the team effectively being kind of in that Irvine, Costa Mesa area, and the guys like Tony Miola, Alexi Lawless, Marcelo Balboa, John Harkes, Claudio Reyna, Tab Ramos, Eric Winalda, all those guys, they were superheroes to me. And, fast forward from 1994 to 1997, all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the shower at the Rose Bowl in July 4th, 1997, after my debut as a professional soccer player. And I look over and there's Alexi. And I look over and there's Joe Max. And I look over and there's Mike Burns. And, I just had these, Walter Zenga, Spider-Man, who was considered like the Michael Jordan of goalkeeping over in Italy. And all of a sudden, these guys were my teammates. They were my big brothers. And so to kind of see the power of the World Cup here, listen, I'm not naive to the conversation, and I've taken part of it. The cost associated with the tickets and the travel and the hotel and everything else. But if you can dumb it down to its simplest form, this was I think another powerful statement about how we as Americans and Mexican fans and Canadian fans know how to put on a party, know how to put on a show. I don't know if those, results ever go, or excuse me, I don't know if the finances ever go back to what they were in Qatar or previous to that. But in terms of the optics, the visuals, the eyeballs that were on this tournament, I think the United States and Mexico and Canada did an incredible job in their partnership of hosting this World Cup.
So we discussed this a little bit earlier on television that you guys can catch tonight at 10:35. For somebody like you, decade-long MLS vet, and someone like me now who's either worked in or covered the league for 22 years, we like the attention that the World Cup brings a game that I've grown to love and you've loved your entire life. But a piece, I guess I'll say collateral damage, is once every 4 years, some loud media voices decide to chime in on a sport they don't know about or they don't cover, and most of them sound like absolute idiots. And so, look, I was hoping for more from our team, from the U.S. men's national team. I'm not surprised we didn't get more. Belgium is really good. And yes, there may be a couple of years like De Bruyne didn't even start. Lukaku and Doku came off the bench. So was I hoping we were going to win that game? Yes, I was. Was I surprised that we lost? I was not. So on a scale of met the U.S. men's national team reaching expectations, exceeding expectations, or falling short of expectations, what say you?
Yeah, I would say reaching expectations. I mean, the biggest challenge was, I think people didn't give enough credit to how strong the group actually was. When you think about, Paraguay ended up knocking Germany out of the World Cup in the round of 32. So maybe now we look back on that 4-1 win with a different prism. Australia was going to be a battle, and it was a battle. It was everything we expected, except we made Australia look like maybe some of the U.S. teams, back in the day where it was drop in, absorb, and look to just counterpunch and play for the margins. And I thought we were incredibly dominant. And even with Turkey, with the rotation of opportunity and guys kind of reintegrating themselves, I still felt like the team played pretty well. But listen, when you get into that stage and you're talking about Belgium and you're talking about these guys Kevin De Bruyne not starting was, I thought, a tactical genius move from the manager, Rudy Garcia, because it allowed Belgium to be more combative and then still have incredible assets off the bench when you're talking about Doku, arguably one of the best wingers in the world, and then Romelu Lukaku, whose presence has been so well accounted for year after year after year. So disappointing in the way in which they performed against Belgium. I could sit here and talk about the Flo Balogun red card. I could sit here and talk about, the political nature of him being reinstated and thinking about, the hot white glare of the media and then the politicalization of that situation, which goes into just a hybrid of another dynamic and a bigger conversation. But I wonder, at some point, when the canaries start singing in the coal mines, if we'll have like a better understanding of what the players were going through, because it didn't feel like from the moment that whistle blew that was the type of performance that we had seen previous from the U.S. men's national team. It was far from it. So at the end of the day, I think they met the expectations of getting out of the group, winning the group, and making the run. But even if they beat Belgium, then they're running into the eventual champion Spain. And so the whole idea of why not us, I think Mauricio Pochettino leaned into that really, really well. But again, I think it's something that's going to be kind of nightmare fuel for this group as they look back and say we were so much better than the performance that ended up being put in against Belgium.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown because I heard a lot of people say same old U.S. men's national team. And I understand why, because they got out of group and lost in the knockout round. But I really push back on that narrative because I do feel like there were moments where it looked different, it felt different, but it does lead us to the inevitable, dissecting the youth system here. And are we developing players the right way? And what do we need to do to make it look different in 4 years? And I raised a son through the club soccer system. You're currently raising 3. And I get the conversation about pay for play because I hesitate to say this because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but because mom and dad paid $5,000 and $6,000, my son played with kids that couldn't even walk, and you can't cut them because mom and dad already, paid the money, and so those kids are going to be part of the team. And I'm sorry, in a competitive nature, I think cutting. I think the idea of getting cut is important because it makes you to work harder to make the team, and then ultimately, Yeah. So just give me your thoughts, and then what do we need to do when this World Cup comes around in 4 years to maybe make this look a little different and take another step?
Yeah, listen, the pay-to-play conversation has been in play for a long, long time. And by the way, if anyone can figure that out, please let me know because I spent about $26,000 last year between all three boys
Oof.
on soccer alone.
That's serious
So
XM money. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
well played. Well played, kid. Well played. No, but this isn't. I always dumb it down to something very similar. What about travel baseball? What about travel basketball? What about gymnastics? What about all travel volleyball? All of these things. You're still paying for coaches. You're still paying for travel. You're still paying for registration. You're still paying for jerseys. You're still paying for grass time, field time, turf time, court time. All of these things. So it's not an issue, isolated just for the U.S. system. The other part of this is that, it's easy to, I guess confuse the idea when we're comparing and contrasting soccer / whatever football, however you want to approach it in the U.S. conversation, with being distracted by all the other sports. I mean, I grew up as a multi-sport junior high school player, and it wasn't until my senior year that the end of my senior year that I locked in and just played soccer. So, with the idea of all these kids growing up and finding their passion, and now we're effectively trying to force these kids into professional atmospheres at a really, really young age. And then we're punishing these kids if they want to play multiple sports, because then you're not giving enough to one team. You're not, quote unquote, as committed. And then there's like a punishment value that comes along with that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can try to simplify it down to its simplest terms. And that is, if we can, in some way, shape, or form, those that are the ones that have invested so heavily in the game, from the top all the way down to the bottom, if we can get away from the idea of commercializing the player and turning them into assets, I think then you've given an opportunity to just focus on the development. And if you focus on the development, then you also need to focus on the education component for the youth coaches. You need to make it way cheaper and way more accessible. I have one coach in particular I'm thinking of right now that has been involved with two of my children and is involved with my youngest right now. And he can't get enough of the education. He wants his A license. He wants his pro A license. He wants to go over to Europe and get his UEFA badges. But the cost associated, the travel, the time commitment are all serious things. And so to be fully focused on just the development side, that's going to take a lot of financial infrastructure that I don't know how people look at it and say, am I just burning money? Am I just lighting it on fire? Or do they look at it and say, well, then ultimately, what's my ROI if I'm going to invest this type of money? On top of that, listen, we've tried to be Brazil. We've tried to be Germany. We've tried to be France. We've tried to be Holland. We've tried to take a little bit and glean a little bit off of everything. We've done it from directors of coaching and general managers and sporting directors and all of those things, even down to coaches, because, this idea that because they were born in one country over another country, maybe they have a better feel or a better handle on how to develop something. But it just comes down to something even dumber than that. Spence, I grew up in LA. I mean, I was on a grass field every single day that I wanted to be on a grass field. That's not the case in the winter here in Salt Lake City. And by the way, how many grass fields are available just for the kids to go out and play? I mean, like my boys go to Skyline High School. That's all fenced off now. You can't even get into the track football field, much less the soccer field, unless you're trying to jump a fence. And even then, there's cameras everywhere and people are yelling and screaming for you to get off the field. So, you're stuck in indoor facilities, you're stuck in futsal facilities. And then even then, somebody's got to pay for it. You're paying what, $300 to rent half of a field for an hour and a half. So yeah, I'm pointing out some of the issues because I'm not sure where the solution lies. Because the kid that's developing in LA is getting a completely different experience if he's growing up in New Jersey. The kid who's growing up in Florida is getting a completely different experience than the kid that's growing up in Salt Lake City. And I've listened to probably 5 different plans on how to solve this all, from Project 2010 to Ernie Stewart to Claudio Reyna to Now the last guy, Matt Crocker, that came and went. So, maybe it's somebody like Mr. Arthur Blank, Home Depot money, that can pull together a ton of billionaires and continue to figure out how to create a feeder system from the bottom to the top. Because even here in Salt Lake City right now, it ain't free to play soccer unless you're playing at Real Salt Lake's Academy. And if you're a full-time living student at Real Salt Lake's Academy, that's when it's paid for. But up until that moment, we're all still paying significant sums of money for our kids to participate, whether it's players, getting opportunity to be participation players, or it's the ruthlessness of getting cut, which kind of led for me to be singularly focused on soccer back in, 1992 or so.
All right, moving over here, I've always pushed back on, well, and let's unpack this properly. I mean, the last time the World Cup was played here was 1994, and that did directly lead to the creation and implementation of MLS. I mean, there's really no denying that straight line. But I can remember when we brought RSL here in 2004 when it was announced, and the commissioner, Don Garber, who's nearing the end of his tenure, talked about a World Cup cycle ahead that was going to change the trajectory of the entire sport. And I kind of went, all right, I guess we'll see. So I kind of pushed back on the whole, because you always hear soccer is a generation away. Well, look, soccer is here. It's not going anywhere. The numbers indicate that people watch soccer at a very high level. What they don't indicate is people watch MLS at a very high level. So I shared this with you last night. So last night was interesting because MLS, RSL back in action last night. And I had 3 friends text me who are notoriously anti-soccer and said, I'm sitting down to watch soccer because the World Cup was awesome and this just isn't the same. And of course it's not. I mean, I push back. I'm like, dude, obviously you're not watching France and Germany, okay, or England and Spain. But what's a reasonable, Dunny, expectation as far as the potential carryover of millions of people who just watched this World Cup and maybe they'll now watch MLS? What say you?
Yeah, two quick examples. Number one, I have friends in Southern California that went to go watch LAFC against Inter Miami match day 1 to start the season in Major League Soccer in 2026 over at the Coliseum. And on the day, LAFC just smashed them 3-0, confident. I mean, they had nothing, Inter Miami. And my friends texted me afterwards, and they're like, yo, I was not an LAFC fan. I did not like Major League Soccer. I'm a Club America fan. He's a Manchester United fan. He's a Bayern Munich fan. He's like, but we are now LAFC fans. And they watch every single game, and they became kind of cultish followers because of the way that they played. They were exciting, and they were fun. I used the analogy and the example earlier today, this afternoon. If you go back in the last 10 years, and you look at, converted new Manchester City fans versus Manchester United fans, who's going to have the benefit of that? Well, it's obviously going to be Man City because of Pep Guardiola and Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland, et cetera, the Premier League titles, the Champions League runs, and how fun they are to watch. So I use those as 2 examples because it's very simple for me, and I said this during the broadcast on Apple TV last night for RSL at LAFC. The idea of ownership to convert these fans isn't on Major League Soccer as a whole. For me, it's on the individual owners, and it's on the continued investment in the roster as we continue to watch the evolution from David Beckham and a rocket ship to the moon, changing the trajectory of Major League Soccer. And now with Lionel Messi in market into Inter Miami, you have to, and it's very simple, Spence, and it's probably the reason why you became a Tottenham Hotspur fan. You want to watch guys that are exciting. You want to watch guys that can do something special. You want to watch guys that, can manufacture moments out of nothing, that, you feel a sense of urgency when they're on the field, that they are living and dying by each individual touch on the ball, that they are fully committed to representing the crest of whatever team that they're playing for. And, ultimately he's like, yeah, that's my team. That's my guy. Like, look at the way he plays. Like, I identify. Like, that's who I want. We certainly had that in the days of Jason and Garth in the run in 2009, with Nicky Raimondo and Kyle Beckerman and Javier Morales and Sabo and, all the other guys, Will and Ned and Nat and Hamison, and, names go on and on and on. But, that's the challenge is how do you as a team put in these performances where all of a sudden fans are like, oh, yeah, I want to be a part of that. But it's not just unique to it's not just unique to the World Cup. I also think this is a byproduct of Leagues Cup that's right around the corner. I mean, Max and I got the game RSL against Tigres and then RSL Mazatlan a few days later. There's going to be a ton of fans that are Tigres fans or Mazatlan fans or Liga MX fans that are going to show up in the stadium. And if you put in a performance and you win that game, all of a sudden, maybe they are now, their second team is RSL because they can't go to Tigres games. They can't go to Mazatlan games. They can't go to Chivas, the Guadalajara games down in Mexico, that they only come, they're only able to support them here in the United States. So those are all, I think, kind of the simple solutions. But again, it comes down to, how are you putting together a team that, can excite fans and, when they show up in the stadium, be like, dude, I want to come back. I want to, like, this is my team. Like, I love this atmosphere. I love this culture. I want to learn more about this group. But these are the type of people that I identify with. I think that's the simplest answer to something like this.
All right, moving over to a little RSL here before I set you loose, and let's start in a vacuum because you were on the call. You were on the call last night with our guy Max Brutus, who was the guest on this program yesterday, and obviously he's the best. Wondering what you most attribute the what I perceive to be a little bit of a one-sided match too. Early on, RSL looked pretty good, and you and Max were kind of talking about it, but you kind of warned us, like, hold on, like this is kind of what LA does. And then LA did what LA does, and they were able to beat RSL rather easily last night. Give me your thoughts on that in a vacuum.
Yeah, listen, I think the eyeball test is that at moments RSL was pretty damn good. And statistically, if you're talking about passes completed and getting into the opponent's penalty area and all those things, there was a lot of good stats that if you were trying to be as optimistic as possible, you kind of lean into. But the reality is that the reason why I said that about 10 minutes in, I wasn't trying to be flippant. I wasn't trying to be a pain in the ass, and I'm often accused of disrespecting Real Salt Lake. But it was actually quite the opposite. It was the warning signs of everything that I saw just a few nights earlier last Friday in the El Tráfico game when LAFC was on the road at LA Galaxy and ended up winning 3-0. For 35 minutes, LA Galaxy looked the better team. For 35 minutes, LAFC looked like they were suffering and they were dropping deeper and deeper. And then all of a sudden, and this is exactly why I pointed out DeAndre Yedlin. It's exactly why I pointed out Stein Spearings and Noel Caliscan, and exactly why I pointed out Philip Quinton before the goals were scored for LAFC, because I've seen this story. I've covered enough LAFC in the last 5 years that I know exactly what their best attributes are. And they almost they lull you into a false sense of security. I've had some interesting conversations about the idea of the high press, interesting conversations about individual attacking players. Do they hunt the ball and try to win the ball, or do they hunt the position and try to cut down the passing lanes? Because those are two drastically different conversations when it comes to a high press. And so I think what Marc Dos Santos in his first year of being the full-time coach after Cherundolo left, he's realized that, especially during this break, that it's okay for them to drop back. Because the reality is when LAFC has more than 50% possession of the ball, they've only won 3 of the 6 games. They actually are much, much better allowing the opponent to have the ball, staying tight defensively, and then smashing them in transition moments. And that's exactly what happened last night. And as I said to you earlier, and I said it last night on the broadcast, there's only 2 teams for me that give you the biggest reality check of where you truly are, the ability to really look in the mirror and not overstep what the reality is about your team. And that's LAFC and it's Inter Miami. And when you play at LAFC and you play at Inter Miami, you learn real quick where your shortcomings are. And I think for Real Salt Lake, that's what they learned last night. Concerned about Sergi Solans in the striker position, Olatunji's misses. It feels like there's a DP upgrade somewhere in that conversation. Really concerned about the lack of athleticism between Spearings and Caliscan in the central part of the midfield. And last night was another example of why Justin Glad is the undisputed central defender in this group. Because, I give credit to Luna. He was trying to will himself and will the group into something. He was all over the place. Gozo did his damnedest, but there was a lot that was missing. And right now, we need to see more from Guy Lavogui. I thought Sanabria's was at times really, really good, and then at other times he was concerned about the transition moments, especially after the substitutions from Saffelberg to David Martinez. And then, you're back to the drawing board with a short turnaround time, and now you're on the artificial surface up in Portland against a team that smashed Seattle 5-1 in Seattle, and then ended up drawing 2-2 at home the other night against FC Dallas.
Donnie, great stuff as always. Welcome home. I'm sure it was good to see Jade and the boys, and congratulations on what must have been an excellent 6-7 week experience, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
All right, Brian Dunseth stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Uinta Golf. Time now for the PGA Tour leaderboard update. It's the 3M Open. It's brought to you by Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Visit us in store for a free custom fitting at Uinta Golf or shop online at worldwidegolf.com. Got to stop there after the show. Got a little golf trip coming up. Shout out to our friends at Uinta Golf. Emiliano Grillo, 7 under par. Ben Cole's actually just birdied 15. He's at 7 under as well. Scotty Scheffler, of course, Lucas Glover, Michael Brennan, Kevin Roy at 6 under par. Local players struggling a little bit. Zach Blair, who's been on a bit of a heater, is 1 under, so he's only 6 shots off the pace. But Tony Finau's season continues to go in the wrong direction. Tony is through 12, but he's 2 over par, which is tied for 121st. The only good news about this is that Tony may have to play at Black Desert for the Bank of Utah Championship, and going to go down there for that coming up in October. So excited to potentially see Tony play a little golf. All right, 1 hour down. We've got 3 hours to go. Richard Smith live in studio for an entire hour coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, buckle up, kids. It's not Craig Bolerjack, but buckle up. Get ready to be entertained, informed, illuminated for the next hour of Dynamic Sports Talk Radio. Back on the ground in Salt Lake City, Utah, sporting his Rolling Stones T-shirt is the legend himself, Richard Smith. Hello, sir. How are you?
Spence, we are doing great. We came back from a nice river cruise on the Danube over in Europe last week, where we started in Budapest and ended up in Prague and had a nice 11, 12 days over there where the weather wasn't quite as hot as here, but the water on the Danube was low. So a couple of spots we had to take buses to get somewhere else because the boat couldn't get past certain places. And so they tell us that one night in the big meeting in the lounge on the boat, and some big overweight 300-pound guy is sitting there. He raises his hand. The captain goes, "Yes, sir, you have a question?" He goes, "Yeah, if me and a bunch of other guys like me got off the boat, could we just keep sailing then over the places?" and the whole place broke up. And yeah, it was pretty funny, but we had a great time. Yeah, but good to be back home.
Did you catch any World Cup fever as you're traveling internationally?
No, we were over there in the lounges, and I'll tell you what, in Europe, as you can imagine, it's all over the place, and people not only have their allegiances, but everybody who's just the most casual, not even soccer fans, are all riveted to what country is doing well and who's playing better than another and who's the upstarts and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun to be over there during all of that and to hear a lot of different perspectives on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was because it was played here. I thought it was so fun. I was actually genuinely sad when it ended.
Yeah, well,
Sunday.
I think it plays into it, Spence, myself, and I've always thought this about the Olympics too, is that when it's in your so-called normal time zone, like in the North America, South America area, it's easier to follow because it's kind of in a little bit of the similar rhythm you have when it's over in Sochi, Russia, or it's in Tokyo, or it's somewhere in Eastern Europe, and all of a sudden it's 11 hours off, and you're trying to follow, the team you want to follow or the individual athlete you want to follow, and their event is at 4 a.m. It's just not quite. You can't get into it the same way, and I just think it's advantageous for us here that it was in the Americas and that we were able to watch it at the times that was easy for us to do that, and so I think that lends itself into getting more involved in it.
You just jarred something in my mind that I think you'll be really good at here, because we just had Dunny on, Brian Dunseth, and every time a World Cup cycle comes and goes, and our U.S. men's national team doesn't necessarily advance as far as most people would like them to or believe they should, it turns into this conversation about the youth soccer developmental system in America and pay for play, right? And I raised a son through the youth soccer system here in Utah, and he played club soccer, and it was very expensive every year. And there are a lot of conversations about, should we change this? Should we copy a model that takes place overseas where maybe a Lionel Messi suddenly comes from nothing to nowhere and, has to work hard and play on fields that aren't necessarily optimal, and then maybe iron sharpens iron, and suddenly we have players like Argentina does or Spain does or whatever. When it comes to the basketball youth system, because, one of the many things you did with the Jazz is you scouted players and started watching them when they were young, and it's changed a little bit since I was in that kind of ecosystem a little bit. AAU was really new when I was in high school, and I had an opportunity to play AAU basketball for 3 different summers, and now it's very widespread. And, there were only 2 teams in Connecticut when I was playing, and I made the Stanford Express team, and we played all throughout the Northeast. We came out and played a tournament in Vegas, and it was a really great experience, and it made me a better player when I went back to play high school basketball. But when it comes to what we see now, as far as the way we're developing basketball players, because the conversation here does turn into, are 5 of the 7 best players in the world right now either European or not from America? Maybe with Shea and Wembanyama and Jokic and Luka. Are we developing basketball players the way we should be developing basketball players in America right now? And what's the difference as far as other ecosystems?
Yeah, well, the main difference, Spence, is that what I experienced over the years when I was working for the Jazz, and I spent the last 8 years that I was with them, one of my main responsibilities was overseeing our international scouting. So I worked with a group of guys. We had our own department that was responsible for making sure we're on top of everybody who was outside the United States, and to make evaluations and decisions about guys who we thought were good enough, not good enough, on the edge, whatever. And the thing that we learned, that I learned over those years, was that overseas, especially in Europe, somewhat in South America, not as prevalent because South America is really soccer heavy. They have some of this, but especially throughout Europe, there are a lot of youth teams that are tied to the local soccer teams. And so whether it's Real Madrid or whether it's Barcelona, whether it's Munich or Berlin or Athens with Olympiacos, whoever it is, all these big time money soccer clubs also have a basketball component. So if you are identified as a youth, if you're 12, 13, 14, and you're playing basketball locally, and somebody identifies you as someone who might have some measure of talent or might be able to go somewhere in the ecosystem of the sport, those local clubs are going to try and attract you to come, and they're going to train with you year-round during what we consider their high school years. So, for an extreme example, obviously, is Luka Doncic, who's from Ljubljana, Slovenia, was an exceptional youth player at 12, 13 years old. At 14, I go and see a youth tournament that was being held that year in Madrid, and he's playing for the Real Madrid youth team. He's 14 years old, but he was playing with the 18-year-olds. And so he's if you will, to put it in American terms, he's a high school freshman who's playing on a team with all seniors, and he's the main guy running the show. So you could see that talent right away in that disparity, especially at that age. And so we were following him since he was 14. Victor Wembanyama was the same, although Victor was long and gangly, but you could tell he was a smart kid when he was younger, and he was you could tell that he was thinking the game and also working on different aspects of the game when he was at the couple of clubs that he played for around the Paris area. And so the European model takes the kids and they train them year-round. They put a lot of money into them, just like they do in soccer. In the soccer model, there are some teams, Ajax, for example, in the Netherlands, they spend reportedly $100 million a year just recruiting and scouting youth kids all over the world to try and get who they think are the top 10, 12, 15 kids who are just entering high school age, and bring them there and train them. And the example we've used before, Spence, the analogy is just like the old the guy mining the gold in the river. They put them all in that pan and they shake it out over several years, and hopefully they get a couple of gold nuggets, and they think that's it pays off for them in the long run. That's what we don't do in the U.S. Nobody has a concentrated system. There's one singular outlier at the moment, which is IMG Academy in Florida, that kids can go to, and they can get specialized training there in basketball. And then Montverde Academy has come along, and then Oak Hill Academy has been doing this, but it's nothing that's concentrated around the U.S. where it's a singular focus and a certain blueprint, if you will, to try and get kids better with their skill level. Overseas, they work a lot with everybody at different positions, improving their skill in everything. So it's ball handling, it's shooting, it's passing, it's learning how to run, all those things. In the U.S., we don't do those things, Spence. Everything is what? Everything is about if you're athletic enough and you're long enough and you can jump high enough. It's all about getting to the rim and dunking the ball so you feel like you're a man. Or it's about pulling up from 35 feet and shooting a three, to show that you can shoot, which you can't shoot because you don't practice that stuff. You're just throwing it up there. There's not a set way of training the kids in the U.S. This is why you see guys come through various European systems, and you see them developing those different areas of their skill level when they're 16, 17, 18. So now they get to, if they're good enough and they become one of those guys, 19, 20 years old, come over to the U.S., and whether they're at a high-level college program or they come into the NBA early enough, you see that they're able to contribute something right away because of that kind of training they've had.
So I think it was Tyler Haws. I'm looking right now. So I believe it was Tyler who may be coaching in the AAU ecosystem, or maybe he was just attending a game where somebody he knew was playing. He sent out a social media post where they were introducing every AAU player to great fanfare, and the kids were running. They were doing the three-point arrow, the three goggles, and these are 10, 11-year-old kids. And then they had banners for every player that was on the team. And then you should see the highlights of the game, and they're not even very good players. They just are on these teams. And Tyler sent something out that was like, this is an issue with what we do with these kids in America. And I believe it was Kendrick Perkins who saw the tweet and decided to clap back because he's running an AAU league. And he's like, lighten up. This is what we do or whatever. And I don't want to sound like the old guy yelling at a cloud, but are there things like, do they do that in Europe? I mean, are there things we can learn from the way they're developing players elsewhere that if we don't decide to implement some of them, again, I reference right now, you can make an argument that 5 of the top 6 or 7 players in the world are not from the United States, and basketball is very much our game. Are we in danger of being passed worldwide if we don't change the way we're developing players?
Of course, yeah, and that's true in any sport. In the Nordic sports, for example, Spence, in Sweden and Norway, Iceland, these countries that are some of the top athletes in the world in winter sports, whether it's downhill skiing, ski racing, ice skating, whatever it is, they are already have been in place for a number of years. Training methods that say they don't allow these top level teenage type athletes to train 12 months a year in one sport. They have to take so much time off periodically in between during a particular calendar year to be able to rest their body, to rest the muscle groups, as they're growing, as their bodies are expanding and all that kind of thing. Their training methods are different because they're finding out that helps in terms of injury prevention down the road. In the U.S., when you get to 12, 13, 14, if you're identified as one of those kids, all you do is play basketball 12 months a year. You don't do anything else. So now you get 10 years later, 12 years later, if that guy progresses and he becomes a guy who's good enough, he's in the NBA. Now he's dealing with injury issues, which we've seen by guys in their mid-20s. It's not because they're not in shape. It's not because they're not taking care of their bodies. It's because they've been doing the same thing year after year after year. Those muscle groups, those the tendons, their joints, all those things are getting the same use over and over and over, and they have no rest and recovery from those, and so it leads you eventually to having some kind of injury-related problems. The U.S. always, Spence, you talk about having posters of kids hanging from the ceiling at 12 years. This is all the American dream of, hey, look at me. Hey, everybody, get an eye on me. Get the spotlights on me when you haven't done anything, right? This is the social media age. These are the people who are famous for doing nothing, whether it's the Kardashians who started it and all that kind of, and now all these social influencers who make a very good living in some respects doing nothing but being in your face all the time and telling you what you want to hear. Over in Europe, you never see any of that kind of stuff in the gyms because it's all about the team. It's all about what we're doing in a team sport like basketball to help the progression of the unit to try and have success. A great example I have years ago in that regard, Andrei Kirilenko. We draft him out of Russia in '99. He's under contract for 2 more years at Cheska. We knew that. We knew he was going to stay. He was going to develop over there, and then when his contract was up, he was going to come over. So he comes over as a 21-year-old. We had him that summer league. Okay, he had come over, met everybody, went back to Russia, gets his affairs in order. Comes back in the fall. I'm supposed to go pick him up at the airport. His flight's delayed. I have traffic issues and getting out to the airport, whatever it was. I get out there. The airport's empty. Nobody's there. Can't find anybody. It's before cell phones, proliferation of cell phones. Don't know how to get a hold of him. Trying to get a hold of his agent. Trying to find him. Eventually, I find him over at the hotel that we had used in the summer league. And I get over there and I go to the front desk and, hey, you happen to have a guy named Kirilenko registered at the hotel? Oh, you mean Andre Kirilenko? Yeah, the Russian kid for the Jazz. I go, yes. He goes, yeah, he's here. I go, he's here? He goes, yeah, he checked in like an hour ago. I go, can you connect me? I get Andre down. Hey, what's going on? How'd you end up at this? Because we didn't have him at that hotel. We had him over a different hotel. He goes, well, I arrived at the airport. Nobody was there to pick me up. I knew where we had stayed during the summer league, so I got a taxi cab, and I came to this hotel and got a room. Spence, I guarantee you, if that had happened to any AAU kid, okay, I could be late to the airport for 3 days, and the kid would still be sitting in the baggage claim, looking at the thing going around and round, wondering, oh, now what do I do? Because they're so used to everybody doing everything for them.
Yeah.
Overseas, those guys have to take care of themselves. They have to be responsible for themselves. We see it time and time again, the maturity issue, the difference between international players, no matter where they come from. You know, Australia. The Australians are big on orderliness and the team and all your responsibilities to the group. In Europe, it's the same thing. The American kids aren't taught that. Everybody coddles to them. Everybody takes care of them. Don't worry about it. I got you. You don't have to do anything. So when they get to the NBA, if they get that far, they're used to everybody doing everything for them. And that is not a recipe for long-term success. You know, that's why I marvel at LeBron James. I really do. No matter what you say about him, no matter how you feel about him, the success he's had, I give him 100% credit for everything he's done on and off the court because he had nobody directing him, and I have no idea to this day how he managed to figure out as a teenager on the cover of Sports Illustrated being labeled as the chosen one and when he's 17 that he avoided all the pitfalls and everything else and figured out how to get his career to where it is now and the empire he's built on the business side and all that stuff. He is the rare exception. But American kids are not taught responsibility. They're not given the things that they have to do to learn how to take care of themselves early on. And it's continuing to go in a divergent path, Spence, where you're just going to keep seeing European kids or Australian kids, maybe a South American kid every now and then who has that responsibility, who's grown up with that, come over and be ready, more ready than the American kids to play and compete and take on responsibility.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It made me think of a number of different things. And again, you're going to laugh at this, but I feel like I'm getting older to the point where I can remember certain things about generations prior to. My parents are in town because we're getting ready to spend some time together. And we were talking about this funny story that when we first moved back east, to find where we were living now, we landed at the airport. My dad got a rental car, and I was sitting shotgun with a map. And he was asking me, okay, where do I get off here? And I'm 11 years old reading a map to my father because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have navigation systems. And I can remember we don't need to do an entire diatribe on social media, but initially it was Facebook was kind of the first social media platform that took over the world. There was MySpace for those of us that remember trying to date in a weird online way that came around from it. But when Facebook first started to permeate throughout, like I can remember once I pulled up Facebook and it was for college kids at first. So we had it, adults didn't. And then I started pulling up Facebook and I would see, like my aunt would post, I'm currently eating a Milano cookie. I'm like, what I don't need to know that right now. But then when we incentivized social media, when social media became part, and look, there's no going back. I get it. It's part of the deal now. But whether it's Facebook or Instagram. Now TikTok is the big thing for a lot of the kids. When we started to incentivize it, then I remember thinking like this, I don't know that this is going to end well. Because what it's led to, and the point I'm bringing this up is back to the AAU kids, they're all just looking for one viral moment now, whether it's the dunk, as you reference, or the Steph 35-foot three, and so they can do the LeBron celebration and do their three goggles. They're not looking to learn to play the game. They're playing the game so they can get one moment to post on their Instagram that's maybe picked up by House of Highlights, and suddenly millions of people are watching them dunk without knowing that the kid can't play. He just is a big athlete that got to dunk, and that's all they're trying to. Now I sound like the old, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course,
I think it's problematic.
No, but that's how American society is at this moment. It's the all about, hey, look at me generation, and it's about me and how. Spence, how many times do I go by someone, a young person, and again I'm gonna do the same thing you're doing. Dating myself, a young person walked by in the street, in the mall, at a restaurant, somewhere on this trip I was on overseas even, and walked by a young person who looks like they're in their late teens or early 20s or something, and they have their phone, and they're standing there, and they've got their arm extended, and they're looking at the phone 7 different ways and taking pictures of themselves and putting their lips out and switching their hair.
It's called duck lips, Smitty, just so you know.
No. and but I'm going, what is the deal? I mean, but that's what it's about. It's about me. It's about attracting attention to me.
Yeah.
And in the game of basketball in the U.S., it's all about individualism, and it's not about the team unit as a whole.
All right, you referenced LeBron. I don't know if you've heard, but he's a free agent. So coming up next, we'll talk about some of the landing spots. The Jazz are at 15 players. Are they done? Some summer league thoughts as well, now that that's basically in the rearview mirror. Smitty's with us live in studio. I do want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. Now, here's the deal. It's hot outside. Breaking news. Is your house hot, even though you have the air conditioning dialed up? In the wintertime, does your house stay cold, even though you have the heater going full blast? Well, it's your windows. If you're looking to sell a home coming up in the fall, right now is an excellent time to replace your windows as well, because our friends at Advanced Window Products are offering you a discount of $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. Now, a new thing they're doing is the discounts can be prorated. If you only need to replace a couple, they'll discount you with that as well. So lifetime warranty that can be transferred to the new homeowner. You'll improve the curb appeal of your house, and ultimately you'll save a bunch of money because you don't have to have the AC jacked up or the heater jacked up to have good climate control in your home. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. You can also find them online at advancedwindows.com. More with Smitty coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, Richard Smith is live in studio. You just jarred a memory in me because we were talking last segment about this culture of AAU basketball players that are just looking for one viral moment as opposed to learning how to play the game. And you were talking about how it's kind of seeped into coaching as well, where a lot of these guys are not well versed in the game. They're not coaching the kids the way they need to coach them for these kids to learn the skills. And there was a viral moment of a AAU coach teaching kids the defensive stance. I'll send it to you because you're gonna love it. It's hilarious. And he was teaching them to turn their hips and then run instead of like shuffle, right? Get down and shuffle your feet laterally like you're supposed to. And anyone that's ever played was like, one crossover and you're breaking your ankles. Like, that is unequivocally not the way to play defense. Everyone has known this for years. But it encapsulates what you're talking about. He's not looking to teach his kids how to play defense. Because he clearly had somebody videoing him. He just wants one moment of social media fame as opposed to teaching his kids the proper fundamental way to get into a defensive stance and go side to side instead of turn your hips and run. It was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of well-meaning parents who try and help kids at that age, and I can recognize that. But I think there's more people who try and get involved in the youth sports market to try and just to fill something in themselves about showing people that they can coach, or they should be coaching the local high school team, or they should be coaching the local on the staff of the local college team, or whatever it is. And they think that that's going to be their moment to be able to prove to people that they've been miscast as the the delivery truck guy who drives, the truck, and makes a living for his family that way. And he believes he should be coaching somewhere. And so he takes on the youth team. And there's a lot of that. And it's a lot about this individual stuff that just permeates our sports landscape, I think, at the youth level in all sports. A big growing one now we know is soccer. And a lot of the soccer youth people, there's a great youth soccer program here with Sparta here in Salt Lake City, run by Marco Deruta, who's a good friend of mine, who's come over from the Netherlands to specifically teach kids how to play soccer the right way, how to train the right way from a youth perspective. You get few and far of those in these team sports nowadays, where the person really knows what they're talking about, and trying to instill that on the kids so they learn the proper way to compete in their team-oriented sport. And in my opinion, a lot of the international countries over in Europe, South America, Australia, they're far away ahead of the U.S. in terms of how they teach that.
So we'll see how it plays out. We do have the Olympics coming up, and Team USA needed a miracle to get by France before, and France has a decent young player. I believe it's Wembanyama is how you pronounce that. But let's get over to some of the current NBA offseason storylines. And I mean, look, you had referenced the miracle story that is LeBron James, and it is, and I respect him, and he is this generation's great. Okay, I'm not debating or I'm not debating any of that, nor am I diminishing his greatness. It's this stuff that gets so exhausting and so tiring, where he's doing the media rounds and he has his own podcast, and Rich Paul has a podcast with Max Kellerman, and they're going on all the podcasts, and it's like, okay, now we have a live event in LA, and everybody's like, oh, he's going to announce. And he doesn't, but he gets everybody there, and he's like, hey, trust the process because I'm LeBron, I'm a great leader, all the things that he thinks about himself that aren't wrong but are just exhausting to hear a human say about himself. It drives me nuts, okay? And now he's alluding to he's going to play 2 or 3 more years, and which means we're going to go through this every freaking summer. Miami posts a YouTube link to an introductory press conference for LeBron in 2 days. Then they quickly take it down. They said, we're preparing for the chance. Steph Curry goes on Good Morning America. Steve Kerr's in the grocery store, and somebody puts a camera in his face and asks him about it. James Harden. Everyone's doing the thing to try to get LeBron to come play for them. I have a 2-part question. What would you like to see happen? And if he really wants to win a title, of the options, which appear to be Philly, Miami, Cleveland, Golden State, there's Minnesota. a little Minnesota out there. So what would you like to see happen as far as where LeBron plays next year? And if he is serious about trying to win another championship, what makes the most competitive sense?
Well, I think that those teams you mentioned, they're all in there for varying reasons. They've all, Draymond Green turned down his player option in order to open up money. But the LeBron James thing, Spence. Let's make sure we understand what's going on. He is an unrestricted free agent. He's earned that right the way that the collective bargaining agreement is set up in the NBA. He's put himself in position to be able to pick and choose whatever team he wants to go to. Most guys get in that position so that they can maximize the monetary aspect of it and get the most money they can out of a team that is going to outbid everybody else for your services. For LeBron James at age 41 and all the money he's made and his ancillary businesses outside of basketball, the money has nothing to do with it. Zero. Okay? In this regard, he's trying to figure out which team has the best path to get to the finals and have a legitimate chance to compete for another championship so he can have 5 championships, as the old saying used to go, one for the thumb. So that's what his whole focus is. So he's trying to look at all these teams and how they're set up, whether it's Cleveland with James Harden, who had a player option, he opted out, and he's sitting on the sideline waiting to entice LeBron to come to Cleveland. Cleveland has a very good makeup, of a competitive team if they add LeBron James, who people forget averaged 21, 6 and 5 this year. Like anybody wants that guy, no matter what his name is, okay? And so he comes there with where they have bigs with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, or they've got ball handling with Harden and Schroeder, or they've got scoring with Donovan Mitchell and Harden, or the outside shooting with Max Strus and our own Sam Merrill from Bountiful and Utah State. So they've got, to me, have the best group around to be able to make that kind of a run. And, it happens to be his original team, his hometown team, blah, blah, blah. So that, to me, all seems like that's the most logical fit personally and professionally, and it brings the whole career wrapped up in a big bow at the end of it to try and get one more title and go out on that parade and everything and good night, everybody, into the sunset. That's the way I look at it. The Denver Nuggets believe they have a shot with Jokic and Gordon and Murray. Okay, I don't think the roster is that deep, so they're still trying to figure out the Peyton Watson thing, and that's gonna drain them because they're right up against possibly the second apron. Again, with LeBron James, we're not worried about the money because he'll take less money, whatever it is, if he feels that they have the better chance. But they'd have a tough time offering some good backups, some good second line guys if any of those guys get hurt. Then you got Golden State. They got the Jimmy Butler thing. Tragic accident for them in terms of the plans they had, because now he's going to be out until at least the middle of this next year, and then he's got to ramp up and get back and all that. But then you've got Curry and Butler and LeBron James and Draymond Green. But again, who do you have coming off the bench, and who helps you out in that regard? That's a tough get, I think. Miami, same thing. You have Giannis, Adebayo, and James. Great threesome. Maybe the best threesome in the league if they went that way. But who else do they got behind them? How can they actually make a run? Maybe they get on some magical New York Knicks type run next year with those guys. But that, to me, would seem to be a hard sell. Then you got Minnesota with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert playing the outside perimeter and also the rim protection. Jaden McDaniels, and of course they made the trade for LaMelo Ball, and they re-signed Ayo Dosunmu, who showed that he can be a very good off-the-bench player. So you've got a competitive team like Minnesota. I don't know how he fits playing with a guy like LaMelo Ball, who's kind of a wild card, very talented. Maybe he tones his game down to get a fit around those other guys to be serious about winning. Maybe that happens, okay? I can see that discussion. So that's another team. And then the other serious team for me, along with Cleveland, is Philly, because Philly has, the big boys with Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe. Now they get Jaylen Brown in the mix. Perfect fit for them. And, of course, Joel Embiid is the big is the big question mark, because you never know if he's going to be there or not. If he's there and he's healthy and it's May and you're going into June, okay, now I'm going to roll with those guys if they add LeBron James, because that is a very good, very interesting team to get through the East, to be able to get to the NBA Finals, where you're going to go up against either OKC or San Antonio, or maybe Denver, maybe Minnesota, if you're playing in the East, if you're LeBron James. So all those teams have something to offer. LeBron James is now at home trying to figure out where does the crystal ball tell me the team is going to have the best run next spring to try and get to the NBA Finals. I'm surprised in some regards, Spence. I don't know if I missed it in the news cycle or what, that the Knicks haven't been in this talk at all, primarily because of the business aspect for LeBron James and all the stuff he could monetize and maximize in New York with a team that just did it and really didn't lose anybody. Maybe you want to argue they lost Mitchell Robinson. I don't know. I think he's replaceable to some extent. They brought in Andre Drummond, but I'm really surprised that nobody's talked about them at all. Maybe they just can't get past the money thing or whatever. I don't know that, but I really think it's Cleveland. I really think it's Philly. I think those are the two serious ones to me. If I'm sitting in the living room today with LeBron and we're kicking it around and going, dude, you got to decide, man, what's up? What do you got? Here it is on the whiteboard. Boom, boom, boom. There it is. And to me, those two would be the ones who would be sticking out the most as the most likely to be able to get through an 82-game season and through several playoff runs in the springtime.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Rich Paul gave an interview to Dave McMiniman, friend of the show, that they will not be rushed with this decision. No kidding.
Yeah.
It's already taken a lot of time. Adam Silver is like, dude, we got to finish this schedule. Will you make a choice? And look, and then we'll do some jazz before I say you lose. The league always tells the league ecosystem will tell you when they're done with you. It happens historically. It's happened to Iverson, and recently it happened with Melo. All these guys want to play as long as they can, and at some point, if you're not moving the needle and if you're not making a difference, at least with the bottom line, then the league will tell you they're done with you. The league's not done with LeBron. And look, LeBron made the point when he was talking, I lose track at which freaking public appearance this was. So as long as I'm generating revenue for a team or for the league, you shouldn't tell me when I need to step away. I have no issue with that. Yeah. But at what point do we risk the whole, watching Patrick Ewing in a Seattle Sonics and Orlando Magic jersey with LeBron?
No.
Because going out gracefully and at the right time, it's a tough thing. And I've seen athletes and coaches and people that have worked in the league forever really struggle when that's no longer part of their life. So if LeBron James called Richard Smith, what would Richard Smith say to LeBron James?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, Spence, this is the exception to the rule. From my perspective, LeBron James is different. He's turned out to be a different cat from everybody else. The ability to play and to affect winning at this age. Karl Malone did it. Karl Malone played till he was 41. John did it. He played till he was 41. They slowed down, but they were still very effective players. They were still driving winning, but they could see the deterioration slowly, step by step, and they eventually called it, which was just a natural thing. But LeBron James is a different guy. He's in tip-top shape. He keeps his body there. He's got another thought process, another level about whatever he sees his legacy is going to be. And he sees that as trying to win another championship with a serious team. That's why why else would he leave the Lakers? That he looks at it and says, "Hey, guys, love you, but we're not going to get there." And so I gotta get the next train out of town, and that's what he's trying to assess right now. And to me, Spence, all this thing is driven by the media. LeBron James is, to me anyway. He's just sitting there trying to figure it out and try to do what makes sense to him. And, when he figures it out, he'll let you know. That's like I think I said before, the analogy of Brad Garrett, the stand-up comedian, opening for Frank Sinatra, and asking, how long do I go on stage? He goes, you go on until Frank is ready to come on, and then you get off, and then Frank comes on. This is the same thing. You guys just do your business until LeBron tells you what he's going to do, and that's what he's going to do, and then everybody goes. Then you go on with whatever your business is. This is being driven by the media, who has nothing else to do in late July. They have no other stuff they want to talk about, so they're pounding LeBron James. You got to tell us. You got to tell us. Hey, I'll tell you when I'm ready to tell you. He's looking at all those teams, and he's going behind the scenes. Rich Paul is calling those teams. Hey, can you get one more guy? Can you talk Spence Checketts out of retirement? Because we need him as our backup point guard. If we get him, then we're going to be good. That kind of thing. And so LeBron is trying to make sure he uncovers all the stones, make sure he's got all the information so he can lay his money on betting on this horse that's going to help him ride to that finish line next spring. And those are the evaluations he's making. And when he's ready to make that decision, he'll let us know.
Yeah, it's the public. I mean, look, I understand what you're saying about the media creating narratives, and I'm certainly not one to stand up for media members that I think are just hyperbolic and trying to give you hot takes. But there are no other players that are holding public events every 3 days to tease that we're going to do this and do that or whatever. And again, LeBron can do it because he is LeBron.
Yeah.
But there, it just gets a little exhausting.
I get you. No, I know. And what it is, Spence, is we all want to have an answer so that we can move on with whatever our daily things are. And until this thing gets resolved, you're going to Adam Silver will weigh in and, next week and sometimes say, hey, we need to know about the schedule, whatever. They got the schedule. The NBA has the schedule. They're just trying to figure out what team is he going to be on so they can feature those games, whatever. That's something they can do whenever that's not something that they need to know in the next hour. That, to me, that's a little precise because the NBA has those schedules and they know what they're doing months ahead of time. And so I don't know. I take that with a grain of salt.
So if you move over to the Jazz now, they have 15 players under contract. They're bringing Josh Okogie. I really liked Josh Okogie in college.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be a better – and he hasn't been a bad pro. I thought he was going to be a better pro than he has been. Jackson Hayes, Mo Bamba is your backup bigs to Yusuf Nurkic. Best guess, Jazz done? This is the group as we head towards late summer, early fall?
I would think so. I think that's they're going to put all their eggs in that Darren Peterson basket. They're gonna rely a lot on him, I think. I'll tell you, I still don't get the Keontae George thing. Okay, he played really well last year on one end of the floor. He's really got to figure out if he's going to be a real player to me by showing that he can play on the defensive end of the floor. He's going to be playing with two guys who are very good defenders, and Darren Peterson as a guard out in front, whether they're playing him at 1 or 2, and with Jaren Jackson, who's a former Defensive Player of the Year. And if they're going to be a serious team to compete next year and win games, he's going to have to show that that's a serious part of his game. And then that is going to lead into next year at this time, Spence, we're going to have another version of the Walker Kessler soap opera, where now they're going to have to figure out if they're going to pay him, and if they're going to pay him off his rookie deal, how much money does he get? Because he's going to want a lot of money. He's going to want to be showing this year that he deserves something like that. He's going to be a restricted free agent. So then it's going to be, all right, how much money do the Jazz want to get into it, and how much do they want to rely on him going forward in terms of commitment to money? They didn't do it for a guy who, to me, would have been a key cog in what they're trying to do. They gave him away. I thought that was a mistake. That's my opinion. I think they had control of Walker Kessler. Whatever was going on behind the scenes, whatever the discussions were, I don't know any of that stuff. But all I know is business-wise and realistically, the Jazz controlled him for a minimum of 3 more years. To me, you need to figure out a way to have him in the fold for the next 3 years to go with this group you've got with Jackson, with Markkanen, with Peterson now, with George. Those are the guys. Now we have 3 years to work on that and to figure out if we can make serious noise in the West the next several years. They chose not to go that route for whatever their reasons were. They cut bait, and now they got a bunch of draft picks who we won't see for 5, 6, 7 years. That does nothing for their competitiveness right now. And to me, a lot of people think they had the upper hand in that deal. I do not. I think they lost in that deal because they're trying to compete now. They're not. They shouldn't be worrying about 5, 6, 7 years from now. They should be worrying about pulling that train out of the station today and trying to start be competitive today. Walker Kessler will give them that chance the next several years with this group they have right now, and they let that go through their fingers. So, okay, that's a decision they made, and we're going to have to see, how that plays out going forward.
First apron this year is $209 million. Second apron is $221.6. And if you look at what the Jazz have now that the roster appears to be complete, they're at $180 million this year. So if we added Walker's 29, that's about $209 million. And then if you extend Keontae, you're not just going over the first apron threshold, you're flirting with the second apron. Yeah. The teams over the second apron this year, Orlando. Oof. Actually, Orlando's the only team over the second apron.
OKC was.
OKC was. They traded back. Dort. Yeah. So Timberwolves, Knicks, Thunder, Suns, Nuggets, all over the first. Yeah. Everyone else is below.
Yeah.
So is it economics?
No. Well, you could argue some of that, but I really think in looking back at the Kessler thing, whether we ever hear from the Jazz about what the breaking point was, I think it was about years because they gave him supposedly a bona fide strong offer. We've talked about that 5 years
yep.
at 140 or whatever, 28 a year. So they wanted him committed to the long term, i.e., 5 years with our group. Okay, they didn't want to do that. Whatever was going on behind the scenes. He ended up getting a 3+1, which player option, which means it's really just a 3-year deal. It seems to me somewhere in that discussion, the Jazz said, we don't want to just do 3 years. We want the 5 years. We want the full commitment. His camp said, we'll give you 3 years. The Jazz, in some respect, said, no, that doesn't work for us, so we're going to cut bait and move on. I think that's short-sighted. I think that was the wrong approach. I think you sign him for what you can get him, and then you rely on your guys, your group, the front office, the coaching staff, the support staff, your teammates, everybody around you to get you in, to be competitive for 3 years, make some playoffs, get a Western Conference final run, whatever, and then 3 years from now, you try and figure it out from there with the idea that by then – the guy says, wow, this is a great group. We got to keep the band together. Let's re-sign. Let's keep it going. I think they, in some way, looked at that and said, yeah, we don't want to get in that area. We don't want to test that. So we're just gonna move on. I think that was a short-sighted move, in my opinion.
All right, last thing before I set you loose, and we'll have to be a little quick here because we do have to break, but Darren Peterson looked really good in Summer League.
Yeah.
He did. And you and I, the past couple of hits, we've talked about what we can gain from a Summer League experience and how to analyze it and what does it mean if a player like Cody Williams isn't looking awesome, and what does it mean if a player like Darren Peterson is. I, like you, believe that they're going to throw Darren into the fire. I think he's going to start. I think he's going to handle the ball a lot, and I think they're going to ask him to do a lot for a 19-year-old. Doesn't usually go well when they're 19. It does sometimes. Usually those guys are named LeBron or Kobe or whatever. What does year one look like for Darren Peterson and the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, I think Darren's gonna play a lot. He's going to have a lot of responsibility. I think he's going to get bumps and bruises. He's going to find out what the NBA is like. But he looks like a kid that's not going to back down. A kid is just going to keep fighting and stay in there. And I think it's going to be exciting for Jazz fans to watch him grow in that role in his rookie year.
Welcome back to the United States of America, Mr. International Worldwide Traveler. Smitty, it's great to see you. We'll see you soon, okay?
Spence Checketts, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
The great Richard Smith. I want to let you know that Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor are coming to a big screen near you the end of Oak Street on August the 14th, and we want to send you early. Tune into the Sean O'Connell Show at noon this week for your chance to win 4 tickets to an advanced screening on August the 10th. More details can be found on ESPN700sports.com. All right, we got 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. My friend Jenna Fink from KUTV is going to join us. Then we have Stevenson Sylvester as well. And then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We'll say goodnight at 6 on ESPN 700. Is this Billy Idol? James, are you playing Billy Idol on the radio show? Was this Jenna's choice, or did you go rogue here? Oh, wow. Well, look, it's a first on the program. We've never had any Billy Idol. I'm not anti-Billy Idol. It's caught me off guard. Next time we'll let Jenna Fink pick her walk-up song. Jenna, thank you for the time. If we allowed you to pick your walk-up song, what would it be?
Ooh, man, that's tough. That's tough. I don't know if I could come up with one on the spot. I got to have that in the bag. I got to come up with like a walk-up song that I can have. But thanks for having me on.
Is there a favorite band? Is there a couple of bands that on your playlist right now?
Ooh, now you got me opening my playlist because as soon as I'm thinking about songs, I can't think of any. Hang on one second. Let's see what we got.
See, the reason I'm bringing this up is Dave Fox is a baby about his walk-up songs. So I just want to make sure sometimes TV people,
Olivia Rodrigo is coming out with some good songs right now, but I don't know if that's really the vibe for a walkout song. Oh, Olivia Dean's really good. That's kind of the music I'm in, more pop.
Okay.
Wasn't where I'm leaning.
Wasn't she here last night? Didn't she play a show here?
Yeah, she was here, or maybe it's tonight. One of the two. It's around this time.
Okay. All right. Well, enough music chat, Jenna. We can move on from that. Jenna is new to our market. She's with over at KUTV, so a coworker of sorts, as I'm part-time over there. I'm just out of curiosity. Now you've got a little equity. You've been in the market now for a few months. How you like living here, and what are some of the things you've learned about our market?
It's been a blast. It's been so much fun getting to, of course, cover all the great sports that are here, diving right in with the Mammoth making the playoffs. I got to go down to Las Vegas and cover their first series against the Golden Knights down there. And then, of course, getting to experience that at the Delta Center for the first time was amazing. The Jazz, a lot of excitement around Darren Peterson, of course, and just getting to see kind of the summer league here and all the stuff that goes along with that was really cool. So the sports have been absolutely phenomenal. I've loved getting to explore the nature. I didn't get on the slopes this year, which I've never actually been skiing. So I do need to learn that next winter. Everyone told me that it's okay though because the snow wasn't that good. But that's on the bucket list for the winter. But no, it's been an absolute blast. Everyone's been so nice and it's been so much fun. And I'm excited for football season. It's already, we're already a week, 2 weeks away from fall camp, so it's right around the corner.
I have no frame of reference as to whether or not you have a soccer background. I'm just curious as to your thoughts on this fun World Cup cycle and what you think it could mean for Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals now.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was out at a couple of the watch parties at America First Field, and they were packed for the U.S. games, for the Mexico games. Really cool to see the community uniting, and that was something I had a chance to talk to a couple of the RSL and Royals players just about that, and they said that it was just really cool to kind of see everyone coming together, and hopefully it does translate over to RSL and the Royals, who are both having great seasons. It was really cool to see kind of with the U.S. having their first knockout win since I think it was 2002, and all those more historic things, and everything with Flo Ball again. I think people were uniting, and it was kind of entering the mainstream culture more. And I think that will do kind of wonders for the Royals and for RSL. It's a while until RSL is even back in town, so it feels like it's even more an extended break, even though they were back in action last night and are back on the road for a couple more games. But I think it has the potential to really spark it with the games having been in the United States, so many of them. I think it can spark the younger generation, people who are, kids right now, getting interested in the game, and it can have like more of a long-term effect down the road.
You recently were out at America First Field when Burnley FC was in town to take on RSL for a friendly, and you had a chance to catch up with J.J. Watt, whose wife Kelia is from here and won 4 state championships in high school, and of course played for the U.S. women's national team as well. So 2 very highly accomplished, decorated athletes in one couple, which is pretty cool. What were your takeaways from your conversations with them?
How cool is that, right? I mean, that was just so cool for Kelia to be back in her hometown with the team that she is now part owners of. You could tell when I was talking to her a little bit that it was a very full circle moment, and she enjoyed showing their kids around the field, because I think she won one of those state championships on America First Field. So really cool experience for her. And talking to JJ, I mean, he's been a soccer fan, a fan of the Premier League for several years, even before, and it was interesting kind of learning about why he wanted to become an owner in a team, because it's kind of random, right, to want to become a part owner of a soccer team. But he said he wanted the adrenaline rush and to keep that similar rush that he had on the field, which makes sense. So I thought that was really interesting, talking about that, and just for him learning the ins and outs of what it's like to be on the other side of the game. Instead of playing, you're the one that's helping make business decisions and things like that. And he said it was also an adjustment to get used to the promotion relegation of soccer over there. But he said that that's probably one of the most pure forms of competition, right? I mean, you're playing to stay in the league that you're in. So I think it was just really interesting hearing his perspective on the game and how he thinks it's going to help grow. The World Cup was going to help it grow in the United States as well, because he's a big advocate. He and his wife both big advocates for soccer and growing soccer throughout the United States.
You were a competitive skater. Am I remembering that correctly? Ice skater?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. You recently did a story on synchronized skating, trying to become an Olympic sport. Where are we at with this process? And also with your background, what was it like for you to kind of do that story?
Yeah, so it is funny because I grew up, I did both individual, what you kind of see in the Olympics, individual skating. And then I also did synchronized skating, which is how I would best describe it, as like a dance team on ice. You're creating different formations and doing it all in unison. So that was kind of my background. I did that through college. And nationals for synchronized skating was held here in Salt Lake City back in March. So I got a chance to get out there and talk to some of the local skaters, because there's a team here in Utah, and then talk to some of the other skaters that are with other teams across the country and people who work with U.S. figure skating, just about the push for the Olympics. And then, funny enough, when the 2030 Olympic Games, they announced 2 new sports, and they announced synchronized skating as one of them. So it had been a decades-long push, even from when I was a kid, of trying to get synchro in the Olympics, and it's finally going to happen starting in 2030. It's going to be a little different. So normally with synchro right now, we see 16 skaters on the ice at once. It's going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to be 9 skaters. So it'll be a little bit different in terms of the different formations, different lifts that they're doing, but it's definitely a start, and it's a start for it to be potentially back in the Olympics when they're here in Utah in 2034. The sport actually started in my coach. We did a lot of competitions throughout the year. We traveled and stuff. It was so much fun. But no, I was never going to the Olympics, but that's okay.
You've done a lot in your young career. You come to us from Tucson. Is there an event, a game, a moment that you have as like a dream that you like to cover?
Well, Olympics would be definitely up there, just given the figure skating background. Also a Super Bowl. I've been very blessed to cover World Series. We've done NHL playoffs, of course, Final Four I've done. A lot of really cool events, but Super Bowl is definitely one of them. I grew up in Texas, so football was always, my favorite sport to watch, and so it'd be really cool to get to cover one of those. Do
you recall what month you landed here when you started working here?
Yeah, I started in December, so it's been like 7 months.
Yeah, so you started the month that maybe the biggest story that we've had here started to surface and then ultimately broke, and that, of course, is Kyle Whittingham leaving and Morgan Scalley taking over. And we're, of course, the home of Utah Athletics, have been for 70 years, the only home Utah Athletics has ever known. And so this time of year, we always have one eye on the Utes college football, and we had Big 12 Media Days down in Frisco, which was kind of the unofficial start. But I'm just kind of curious as to what it was like for you to, because don't take this the wrong way, you were a little spoiled with a massive story that doesn't happen around here very often, to be able to be in the middle of what was such a massive deal, not just locally but nationally. Now that you've had 7 months to kind of digest that, your thoughts on where we find ourselves with Whit in Ann Arbor and Morgan Scalley taking over the program?
Yeah, I think that was like week 2 or 3.
Wow.
That I got here, and it was like, okay, we're diving into this massive story. But that was the best way to kind of get my feet wet and learn, Utah football sports scene, and just kind of learn, that's the best way to learn is just by getting thrown into it. But no, I mean, getting a chance to speak with Morgan Scally. I mean, you can tell how much he loves this program, and the vision that he has for this program is very strong. And he had it even, before he officially took over and was coaching the bowl game in Las Vegas. So I think, and just listening to him at Big 12 media days as well, just kind of his vision that he has with the team. I think they're in good shape. There's a lot of different pieces that are unknowns. Of course, so many new staff members joining him and a lot of new players as well. But I think it's going to be exciting to see kind of the new direction that the program might go under him. And I also thought it was funny that he posted about shutting down on social media, which I thought was, good. I don't know how many coaches do that. But I thought that was also kind of a cool indication of where he's at mentally coming into the season, coming into fall camp, is he's not wanting to listen to the noise. He's focused on him and the team.
Yeah, and we have a very unique college football battle in this market with Utah and BYU. Of course, is going to be played here in Salt Lake this year. And I'm really excited. I remember Mikulich's first BYU Utah game. I'm always excited when a media member is new in our market to see what it's like for them to experience it. Because, look, I'm not one to say, okay, it's Michigan, Ohio State, or Florida LSU. But I will tell you, as somebody who lived elsewhere and has lived here now for 25 years, in my opinion, it's as unique and different than any college football game in the ecosystem. It might not mean as much as some of the others as it pertains to the SEC and the Big Ten, but it means like life and death here in Utah, and it's the proximity. It's 40 miles away. It's families who are literally torn. I'm about to leave for a family reunion, and my family is BYU blue through and through. So we always we always have some fun back and forth. But what are you expecting based off the things you've heard about the BYU Utah football rivalry?
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be intense. I covered Territorial Cup in Tucson, which was Arizona State, of course, and that was intense and kind of similar with people split down the middle with the cities being an hour and a half apart, but they're even closer here. And like you said, I mean, there's just so much, it runs so deep that I'm just excited to see the stadium packed and, all the people that are tailgating and outside, just like showing their spirit and how intense the actual game will be. Like, I don't even know if I know what I'm getting into, I'm just really excited to just see it because I've heard so much about it and how special it is, how cool it is. I'm excited to get to experience it firsthand.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we have coaches that have coached at both schools, players that transfer to both schools, and
they're friends too.
Yeah,
so that's kind of cool of it too, Scally and Kalani.
Yeah, the irony, and look, there's a clip of a young Morgan Scally expressing himself about the way he feels about BYU. I think he was maybe a sophomore at the U at the time. So look, they want to kick each other's heads in. But the venom typically is in the stands. I mean, these guys really, for the most part, Witt and Bronco, I still believe to this day, did not really like each other. But, of course, Kalani came up under Witt. And when Kalani took over after Bronco left, it did bring a little bit more of a human side to it. And I think it kind of spilled over to the fan base. But as you'll find, the players and coaches, for the most part, do genuinely like each other's company.
Right, and respect each other, respect the game.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move over to let's do some Mammoth.
They've been a little busy this summer, huh?
They certainly have, and ultimately, I'm not going to say surprised. I thought hockey would do well here because we've had some minor league hockey teams, and ultimately, I feel like culturally with hockey and the way players show up and play, and they play hard and they play through injury, like. Fans here want an honest effort from their teams, and they want their teams to play hard. And then everybody wants their teams to win. But there is something about this market where, look, we want you to show up. We want you to give a best effort. We want you to show well and represent the community well. And I think the Mammoth certainly have shown they do that at a very high level so far.
Yeah, and it's, they're showing up for the fans. But then I think one of the biggest kind of storylines or talk around the league this summer has been how much the players want to come to Utah. You have guys like John Marino who's signing an 8-year extension. That's a long time. You have players like Vincent Trocheck, veterans, Anders Lee. They're wanting to come west to Utah. They spent years in New York. and they're wanting to come out here, and they're all saying this, So I think that's kind of an indication of, the value that's being put into this team, the resources that are being put into this team, because they want it to be something that excels in the community. And I think it works both ways. When the players are happy, they're playing well, and then the fans are happy.
Yeah, no, well said. And you alluded to this earlier. It's been a difficult 4-year run for Jazz fans and NBA fans and basketball fans in our market. Ryan Smith likes to say that we are very much a basketball state, and in many ways we are. There is a basketball court in every church that you see on every corner. And, even if you don't grow up and you play to the point where you're good enough to play in high school or college, like everyone here plays basketball. People know how to play basketball. It is ingrained in our state. We have maybe the most famous college basketball game in the history of the college game, with Larry Bird and Magic Johnson playing at the Huntsman Center in '79. And the most watched basketball game in the history of the sport took place here in 1997, 1998, when Michael Jordan hit the shot that broke all of our hearts. So we're all hoping, Jenna, that this year is the year where we start to see some improvement. Now, Walker Kessler is a Laker. I think that changes the team as far as what they can be this year. But you were up there for Summer League. You saw Darren Peterson play. What are you most excited about with the Jazz this year?
Yeah, I mean, he looked all the part, especially at SLC Summer League. He had a little bit of a rougher showing down in Vegas, but I think you could just kind of see it right away, his playmaking ability, even on defense, his playmaking ability as well. He just kind of fit in naturally, and that's something that even the coaches were talking about, like his maturity, even as a 19-year-old, and being kind of thrown into everything that he's been thrown into so quickly, but just his kind of maturity, not leaning into the noise too much that was going, especially, comparing him and AJ when they played. But I think there was a lot of kind of maturity that they've seen from him. And I think that kind of stood out on the court as well. I mean, and I think, I don't think there was a little bit of a lid, on the basket in Vegas, but I don't think that's anything to be, concerned about. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think he's going to, especially when we get to see him play with Keontae George, I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
One more question, Jenna, before I set you loose. And I want to be clear here. I'm not doing the whole, Jenna, woman covers sport, ask Jenna about woman sport. I'm not doing that. But what I want to get from you, as somebody who, of course, is very well educated and has been covering sports for a while, what you make of the way Caitlin Clark is covered in the WNBA. There's a story today in the USA Today that was sent to me, and with the warning, you're not going to believe what was written here. And after I read it, I was stunned at what I had read. And it seems like a lot of people are just kind of chiming in to get attention, because all the attention she has brought to the sport. And I say this with soccer, with the World Cup, what you get are loud voices who chime in once every 4 years, and you're like, you don't have to have a take because you don't know what you're talking about. I find it pretty fascinating because it's clear that she has brought a ton of attention to a sport that's been looking for a way to kind of put rocket fuel in the growth of the game. I have two 14-year-old nephews, they're twins, that live in Carmel, Indiana, and they go to these games and they wear Caitlin Clark jerseys and shirts. They love her, and they're basketball players and they're boys. I don't know that we've ever really experienced this, but I feel like the coverage of it has been a little bit clunky. Help me understand why.
Yeah, and to be honest, I hadn't even seen that article until I'm just looking it up now. So I'm not going to comment on that article just because I haven't had a chance to look it over. But I think she's just so, helped grow the game so quickly, like you said, that it's polarizing in a way that it shouldn't be. I don't know. I don't really know why there's been so much negative that's been surrounding her, but you're right that there is. And I honestly don't know why.
Yeah, it's just, it's a weird deal. It's like people don't know how to do it. They're trying, but they don't know how to do it.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You're good.
I was just going to say, before I set you loose, where can everyone go find your work?
Yeah, so post work on social media, on my Instagram and X. Both are at Jenna M. Fink.
Jenna, thanks for the time. I'll see you soon, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, Jenna Fink, my coworker, as I have taken a part-time position with our friends over at KUTV. She referenced where you can find her socials. Want to let you know that you can help Utah kids start school with confidence. Over 200 kids at the road home need your help with back-to-school clothes, shoes, backpacks, and more. Visit ESPN700sports.com or appletreeforkids.com for more information and to donate now. All right, we'll catch a quick break, but coming up next, Utah camp is right around the corner. We're 42 days away from kickoff for Utah football. Stevenson Sylvester. Sly is going to come by coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, Pioneer Day is tomorrow. We are off for that day. So just keep that in mind, a little programming note. And in honor of Pioneer Day, I have a picture of Stevenson Sylvester decked in American flag pants, an American flag shirt, and a very nice American flag top hat. But the shirt is open, and my man's got some abs going. Sly, how are we celebrating Pioneer Day?
Hey, thank God for Photoshop, right? No, man, I am working a fireworks stand with my wife. We've been doing it for years. Absolutely love doing it. It's been a crappy year this year, unfortunately, but fireworks ban has been lifted, so we're back out here. So I am currently sweating out here in the tank, so I had to take the shirt off, as you can tell, flex guns a little bit for America. Here we go.
Wait, are you telling me that these abs aren't yours, Sly? I don't believe you.
Oh, man, it's a T-shirt. You know that you can spray paint on shirts.
Hey, where can people come find you to get some fireworks?
Oh, yeah. If anybody's celebrating Pioneer Day, man, come do it. We are selling fireworks here, buy one, get one free, out at Bluffdale at the Smith's grocery store parking lot on Bluffdale, right off of Bangor Highway. So as soon as you get off of Bangor Highway in Redwood, I'm right there. So you just come right into that parking lot and come talk some Utah football with me for a little bit. I'm kind of bored and need to talk to some people.
Oh, there you go. And that means I get to keep you for a few minutes if you're bored, which I always love, Sly. Hey,
Of course.
tell me, you were down in Frisco, Big 12 Media Days. Before we get to Utah specifically, tell me what you thought of that entire two-day event. There were some really weird vibes going on with some interesting questions asked to Brett Yormark. It's clear that Texas Tech is mad at the league for the lawsuit, and the league is probably mad at Tech for the Sorsby stuff, and then everyone in the league seems to be mad at Tech, and then, there's just like this weird vibe in the Big 12 right now, and I think a lot of it is as a result of what we've been through with Texas Tech in the offseason. What were your takeaways from those 2 days, Sly?
My biggest takeaways is there's a lot of non-football narratives going on, and it sucks, right? And because it's taken away from so many good teams, so many good possibilities. Who's going to be the dark horse this year? There's three great teams that are leading the pack. You got you can tier level up the Big 12 like crazy, right? You got Texas Tech, Utah, BYU that's at the top, and then you got the next tier of Arizona, Houston, Arizona State with Kenny Dillingham down there. You have no idea who's going to be up at the top of the conference by the end of the season. So instead of talking football, we're over here talking about gambling. We're talking about how we're penalizing people. Yormark is kind of getting tired of I want to, put the focus on these teams. That's what Media Day is all about, and the potential this season instead of, all the stuff. So there's just so much stuff as far as the bill with the Senate and everything that's going on that's taking away from actual football. So that was my biggest takeaway from there. But obviously, the other big takeaway is just who's the talk of the town, right? It's Texas Tech. It's BYU. Even aside from the non-football narratives, even the football talk is Texas Tech and BYU really are leading the pack of what everybody wanted to talk about, which, preseason narratives, preseason polls, all that is just kind of like whatever. I'm not too big on that. I don't think a poll should come out until week 3 when we can actually see these teams, but there's a lot of money in preseason polls. And so, of course, you got to do it. But, there's just those two are running the pack, and Utah's kind of, they are there, but they're not there, as far as what everybody's talking about. Now, of course, we are Utah homers, so we know more about our team than everybody else outside of the conference. But this is prime position of where Utah wants to be. You're still respected, but you're not at the top where everybody's gunning for you. You got a favorable schedule. You got some really prime games that'll put you in great position. You just got to handle your business week to week, man. So, that was my biggest takeaways from Media Days is who's the top dog, where's Utah sitting, and all the outside narratives.
So the prediction markets, the Vegas odds, Texas Tech is still actually a pretty healthy favorite, Sly, to win this thing. The coaches voted BYU to win the thing. And a lot of people are wondering, is that the venom towards Texas Tech? Part of me feels bad for Joey McGuire. He seems like a decent guy and a good coach, and he didn't ask for any of this. But as far as who you believe the favorite to win the conference should be, who is that and why?
It's got to be Texas Tech with all the things that go into what you can take to win. Yes, I love my Utah Utes, but I'm also a realist, right? You know, if my Utah Utes weren't good or I wasn't expecting much, you'd hear me say that. But our team's going to be great this year, and that's why I think that we're in prime position to go out there and take it. But as far as what's on paper, roster-wise, how many people Texas Tech's got coming back, even their quarterback, Will Hammond, that's coming back, their defense, everything that's coming back. And then on top of that, their schedule. They got all the coaching staff back. They got their beautiful schedule. Their off-season exhibition schedule is cakewalk. They can literally do 7-on-7 and win it. And as soon as they get into conference, they don't really have any home game. Any hard game that they have the entire year is at home in Lubbock, Texas. And so they just have so many things that's pointing in their direction as far as their depth and roster, as far as their schedule is aligned. Even if somebody gets injured, they got plug-and-play rosters. So that's why you have to respect Texas Tech and give them the favorite because they have everything pointed in their direction to succeed here this year. Now, again, it's just like our boy Dennis Green used to say, you have to play the game. Right? You can't just crown them right now. You got to play the game. And so really anticipating and hoping that week 7 in college football, is that college football or is that the NFL? Anyway, one of the leagues, week 7 is always like demon time right there. I call it demon time because that's upset central. Week 6 to 8, but normally around that week 7 time, people get upset because there's injuries at that time. Teams get comfortable. There's a lack in preparedness. Some kind of travel, some kind of anomaly happens that lets people offset it and they slip up. And there's tons of upsets that always happen around that time. So look for that around that time for them. But Texas Tech has to be the favorite just because of those things.
So one of the things I found very interesting is I think we did 80 interviews over the course of 2 days. And by the way, if you're a Ute fan and you only want Ute sound and Big 12 sound, go to ESPN700sports.com right now. And we had some people pick Tech. We had some people pick BYU. We had 0 people pick Utah, okay, to win the league. Now, one Ute named to the preseason All Big 12 team. And, as you know, because you played for him and you also played, for Morgan, it seemed like Kyle always liked it when nobody was talking about Utah. I want my 2-star guys. We're going to develop them, and we're going to make some of them pros, and we're going to win football games. But it seemed like he would utilize that as fire if you guys weren't ranked, if you weren't picked in the preseason Big 12 team. And then ultimately he built the program up to where they were too good. He couldn't hide. They were winning the league. They were going to Rose Bowls and oftentimes were picked to win the conference. Morgan is kind of beginning this journey to get the benefit of the doubt because right now he doesn't have it. But do you think that's something he can utilize to his advantage? Do you think he likes flying under the radar a little bit?
I mean, we don't know Morgan yet, and that's the biggest thing too. Is who is Morgan going to be? But honestly, we go back to Kyle, and just my takeaways from understanding that you're completely right on 1,000% level, though. But it's more of, I wouldn't even want to use the word easier. It's just more of what Coach Whittingham knows how to coach. I know how to coach, not being the guy at the top, right? And you got to respect Belichick. He knows how to coach being at the top. Right. But if I always have a goal and motivating goals, and this is why Utah's been great because Utah is not, the blue blood Michigan, Texas, Florida State who gets the 5-star guys. We are built off of 2-star, 3-star guys that we develop into 4 or 5-star guys, by the time they're done playing. And so with that, you have to pull out the best in those people, right? You have to pull out the best athlete of those people, motivate those people in some kind of way. That's what coaches are supposed to do. How do you motivate? The way Coach Whittingham motivates is being underrated, and which, Coach Whittingham was a short linebacker when he played. So he's been kind of an underrated guy his entire life. That's his mentality, right? And so what is Morgan's mentality going to be like? Is that going to be that much different than Coach Whittingham? And so it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how Morgan attacks and his personality. And that's the thing. When you were talking to those Utah guys in your 80-plus interviews over media days, and you're seeing they love Morgan. Morgan's doing a really good job of impressioning on these guys, and they're really taking that in. So I really want to see how Morgan affects the entire team, the coaching staff, and the energy that they come out with this year. It's going to be very interesting, but it's just how you coach those situations, how you coach those type of teams. If I was more in a position where I had 5-star guys, that's a different mentality. I don't know if Coach Whittingham can coach all those. So, he's at Michigan now, so we'll see how he's handled, doing that, which, he's got 40 years of coaching under his belt. I'm sure he's figured it out by now. But, yeah, it's more interesting on the levels of how you can coach and the type of guys that you have. Do I have to motivate these guys? And with this new era of NIL, that brings a whole new bag of I don't want to say problems, but a different type of mindset of motivation and how to coach, a different energy that has to happen. I mean, you saw every single person out there. I've seen so many gold chains and gold grills and Gucci bags and Louis Vuitton shoes just at the players over there. Like, this is a different era. I felt like I was more in the pros than I did it was college media days. And that's just the landscape that you have to. And that comes with egos. Like, you got to get egos. I'm getting paid all this money. I got to be the guy. I got to get more carries so I can get more money. Like, that all comes into play, and it's just a different attack of motivation that you have to do as a coach. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Morgan and this new coaching staff attacks that this year.
Wayshawn's grill, dude. I'll tell you what, he sat down and he wasn't smiling. And then he cracked his smile, and I went, "Whoa!" I mean, that is quite. Have you ever thought about, or have you had a grill? I feel like that would be a good look on you.
Me, I just took we're millennials, so all we had was the gum wrapper, and we folded it around our teeth. And so I had that was my grill. That's the most expensive grill that I've ever got was the gum wrapper tooth that I put around. But no, I couldn't do it. I'm so weird, and when everybody actually talks to me, you understand how like OCD and weird I am. I don't like necklaces. The only thing I wear right now is maybe a bracelet or a watch. I don't like things around my neck. I don't like any of those. I don't things around my teeth. Like, even when I played, like, I had to have the smallest mouthpiece because I just don't want to fiddle with all that stuff. And so I just like to go. And so, that's just different. It's different personalities with all of that, man. And it's you saw everybody's having a certain personality, but Wayshawn, man, I absolutely love that guy. Talking to him is awesome. And to know his mentality going into this season has me so excited for this Utah running game.
Yeah, the days of a bell cow, unless you have like Saquon or Derrick Henry, they might be over entirely. But do you feel like Wayshawn might? I mean, look, there were so many games last year where it felt like every time he touched the ball, he was ready to break off a 40, 50-yard run. I mean, he averaged 7 per carry. Do you think we'll see him maybe in more of a featured role, not necessarily a bell cow, but more from Wayshawn this year?
Well, yeah, I think last year, I mean, he came in his freshman year at Washington State, he had 700 yards, right? And so he came in last year, and he wasn't the number one guy. They were kind of balancing around splitting carries with him and McCreary. McCreary came with Beck, and so, there's also a love there. But Wayshawn's that guy now. He's the number one guy. There's no running back battle. He is the guy, so that's a different mentality. It's all about the type of plays that are called for him, right? I actually love, Wayshawn's skill set, right? Early in the season, he did a lot with his hands. He caught out of the backfield a lot. He had some 60-yard runs for touchdowns. Because when he gets in the open field, as short as he is, his little legs, he be going. Nobody can catch him, man. And so he has great hands as well. So he catches out of the backfield. So you don't limit guys like that. You don't just be like, okay, you're getting 25 carries in the backfield, although I believe he can. I think that he's also being utilized in the passing game and in the blocking game. He's so stout and strong. Like, he's extremely extremely valuable in so many different assets. And that's why I just think that this Utah offense is going to be so hard to game plan against, because what you saw a lot is a lot of shifting personnels, right? We're shifting sets, right? They can go from an empty set back to a full house set in the backfield, and then motion that out and get to another double look. And they can do that in so many different capacities. And then you look at the personnel, that's going to be with Bird Franklin and Devin Dempster in the game, and you have Wayshawn Parker in there. Now you go tight ends, you can introduce Hunter Andrews in there, you got Brandon Pagan. Morgan probably told you guys that this is probably the best wide receiver group that we have had at Utah probably ever. And that's saying a lot from the 2004 Fiesta Bowl team that he was on and been in. And so I'm very, very excited to see exactly how McGiven wants to use this offense and where does Wayshawn Parker's touches come? Are they coming in the passing game? Are they coming all in the run game? How are you spreading the ball around to all of these extremely skilled receivers? It's got to get everybody excited.
Can you make a case for Utah to win the league? And look, as you reference, we're the home of the Utes. You played there, so we're going to lean Utah, and I believe Morgan is built for this and ready for this. They just lost so much, and having to replace 6 assistant coaches, and then having to replace 5 incredible offensive linemen, 2 who were first-round picks. I am optimistic and hopeful, and I believe that Morgan is ready for this. But can you make a case for Utah to actually win the league? If I ask you to do that, Sly, what does it sound like?
I shouldn't really have to pitch you. This is Utah. It's Utah football. It's simple. It's very easy. I think the main part, you talked about assistant coaches leaving, players leaving. I don't feel that pressure. I don't feel the pressure of John Henry Daly leaving. I don't feel the pressure of Jonah Leah leaving. I don't feel the pressure of who was our free safety last year? That last
Smith.
Now UCLA.
Smith
Teo Johnson.
Teo Johnson.
I don't feel Teo Johnson. I don't feel it. Like normally I'd be a little bit more like I'm not at all. I'm actually very, very excited. The coaching staff we hired within. Right, there's a couple new faces, but those are all experienced faces. Jordan Gross is the only thing that hasn't had collegiate experience, but who's going to tell you that Jordan Gross don't know what he's talking about, right? If you're a teacher, you're a teacher. That's in your blood, and that's who Jordan Gross was. That's who he was in Carolina, because I played Carolina every year my year in the league, and just the way that he commanded his team when he was there, when we played against him, I'm just like, you're just a captain. That's just in your blood. That is what you do. Everybody loves you. And so him being a coach just makes so much sense in the world. And so that's an easy place there to replenish. So I think of where Utah lost, I don't feel that heat. I don't feel that weight. Head coaching position, Coach Whittingham, right? He's tenured. He's great. Would replace him that's better than Morgan Scalley. Morgan Scalley is one of the most sought-after defensive, if not the most sought-after coaches in all of the country. How many Michigans and Ohio States and Texas that would probably want to, Tennessee's that would probably want to look out for Morgan Scalley, but we have him as coach. I don't feel the weight of the loss, from our off-season moves this year. And I just think that we're just going to be in prime position here to take over this league. We have a very good schedule. That Holy War game is going to be the game that's going to determine it, right? And guess who has the advantage there? We do. We have the advantage because we're going to be at home. Rice-Eccles Stadium is one of the hardest places to play in the entire country. It doesn't matter. I've talked to guys that are in the NFL that remember playing at Rice-Eccles Stadium, college players that play at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You talk to the Florida guys that came to Rice-Eccles Stadium. They hate playing here. And BYU, we got BYU at home this year. I think BYU's roster, Utah's roster, their coaching staff, our coaching staff, we are dead even. But the advantage goes to Utah. And because we're so even, that's why that game should be the game of the year for a lot of different reasons. It's going to be awesome. I really anticipate both teams being undefeated going into that game. There's going to be even more pressure heading into that game. But Utah's in prime position. We have a very, very, very good favorable schedule. We'll be the SEC team opponent here in our non-conference schedule. Then we go straight into conference play, and it's a line grade from the away games to our bye week. Everything is set up for us to have success this year. We got to get past that BYU Holy War game, and we are right in the mix. We are right exactly where we need to be to go out and win this conference. Texas Tech, by the time we get to the Big 12 Conference Championship game, they'll have such a cake schedule that they won't even know what good opponents is. So they don't have the tempo that you need to go into a big matchup like that. And we would have just played Houston, and we would have just played BYU, which are top-tier matchups. And so we'll be ready for that over Texas Tech. And I think that Utah's just in the best position of everybody to be able to win this Big 12 championship.
Certainly, you always want to see growth and improvement, and you want to see it on the field, and you want to see it in the data and the numbers as well. You gave us a good breakdown of Kevin McGivern a little bit earlier. I just have a hard time. Like, asking Devin to play better than he did a year ago is just a tough deal. He led the conference in QBR. Now, what we're all hoping, and I'm sure you talked to him about this as well, he jumped on the show and was very honest, at least for me, for the first time, just about how hard last year was because of the health stuff. And I know you had some inside information as somebody that, of course, played up there and knows everybody up there. And it was pretty obvious when he wasn't right, because when he is right, he's so dynamic and tough. He wasn't right against Tech. He wasn't right against BYU. But when you look at the numbers, I mean, we're talking about almost 2,500 yards, 64% completions, 24 touchdown passes, only 5 picks. And then he had 10 touchdowns on the ground, averaged nearly 6 yards per carry, and went for 835. I mean, so when it comes to asking more from Devin, is that even fair? Or do you think we will see even better numbers from Devin Dampier in this new system?
See, that's the crazy part is it's the question of we're asking more of him. He's asking more of that from himself. He's knowing that he can do more. You can't get much better than that. You know, the best thing about Tom Brady is that he pushed himself. The best thing about Peyton Manning is how they pushed themselves and knowing that they can give more, they could be better, right? And that's what I got from interviewing Devin and his understanding of his injuries last year. And I'm telling you, the way this offense can go and not being restricted, this can be a 40-point off. And when we were telling you about the best wide receiver group we've probably ever had at Utah is wild, right? And that's just the passing game, let alone the rushing game. And we've seen what Bird Finkley can do in the red zone. So, you know, you have a finisher in the red zone with him, and you have a finisher in the red zone with Wayshawn Parker. So there's just so much upside to a lot of things going on. But I think Devin Dampier he's wanting that for himself. He's knowing a great year. We went 11-2, and I was not myself. Right? So imagine him coming into this year, preparing and getting his body back healthy and being able to take on this year and being at full strength. I mean, that's just potential from all fans to realize, but even of himself. And the biggest thing for us as fans to be able to see that, implement that, and take that away from him is if he has the confidence in himself to pull that out. That gives us confidence as fans to talk the talk, which I'm going to be talking my talk this year, that's for sure, because these guys got me so excited and ready to go from this year, from the potential of this offense. When they're breaking down what McGivern is doing, it's that football talk that I just I salivate at, right? It's awesome. And the complexities of the offense that they know that they're putting on the defense. They know the strain that they're putting on the defense as offensive players is awesome. That means that I know that I'm going to burn this guy on this play. I'm in more control of the personnel. And they said the terminology and stuff from Beck to McGivern wasn't crazy. It's not like a huge shift in what they're doing. So that's another year that they're in this program. They in this terminology. The confidence in those plays are just huge. So, well, that being said, that just allows them to take more ownership of this offense, more ownership at the line of scrimmage, to being like, okay, this is a cover 3 play that we called out of the huddle. Let me change this play because I see cover 2 here, and I know a 9-7-3 combination here on the outside will definitely help this, right? Like, they have that type of confidence going in this receiver group, in this quarterback room, man, and all they're going to want to do is get into the end zone, man, multiple times a game, and they expect the most out of themselves. And that's the first step, is getting them to understand what their potential is and then going out there and execute it. So that's what's got me so excited. I really, really, really can't wait to see these guys really take the field here in September.
Sly, one more time for folks who want to celebrate Pioneer Day. How can they come find you?
Oh, man, come get all the fireworks you want. Buy one, get one free over here at the Smith's grocery store in Bluffdale, right off of Bangor Highway. So 139 South and Bangor and Redwood Road. So Bangor and Redwood, come over here. Come hang out with me for a little bit. Come give me some company. I'd love to talk to Utah football with you guys as we get ready for this season. Today and tomorrow, I'll be here all day today, all day tomorrow. So come make it happen.
Sly, you're the man. Thanks for the time. Have a great holiday. We'll chat soon.
You too. Appreciate it.
All right, Stevenson Sylvester, before we catch a break, want to give you one more PGA Tour leaderboard update. It is the 3M Open. This is brought to you by our friends at You Into Golf by Worldwide Golf. Visit us in store for a free custom fitting at You Into Golf, or shop with us online at worldwidegolf.com. Get there. Ben Coles went low. 62 for Ben. He's at 9 under par, 2 shots clear of the folks at 7 under par. Emiliano Grillo, is 7 under, as is Gary Woodland. Scotty Scheffler, Lucas Glover, Michael Brennan, Kevin Roy, all at 6 under par. Then it's Denny McCarthy and Chandler Phillips at 5 under. Not a great day for our local players. Let me find Zach. Zach Blair's been on a little bit of a heater as of late, playing some good golf. He was at 1 under earlier. Oh, bogey for Zach. So Zach's at even par. And Tony Finau, when I last checked, was at 2 over. And that's, no, he did birdie 17, I think. So 1 over for Tony. So not a great day for our local guys, but still we'll see what happens tomorrow. And then hopefully they're playing on the weekend. It is a 3M Open at the PGA Tour. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the show is next on ESPN 700.